Hey, fun fans. Matt's back here talking to you about Mission Impossible. This is part two of our Mission Impossible recap that Eric Goldman and I did back on We Enjoy Wrestling. It was actually one of the final movie franchise recaps we did before we ended that podcast. We became We Enjoy. This one will have Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout. Ghost Protocol directed by Brad Bird of The Incredibles fame. And then starting with Rogue Nation, directed by Christopher McQuarrie. You may know as a writer, a screenwriter, nominated for an Academy Award for The Usual Suspects, writing that screenplay. And since Valkyrie, really, the Tom Cruise movie, has been Tom Cruise's go-to writer slash rewriter for all of the scripts for the movies Tom Cruise is in. And then he finally directed Tom Cruise in Jack Reacher, and now he's all on board these Mission Impossible movies as writer and director and so forth. So we're going to be covering those final three in anticipation of Dead Reckoning Part 1 next week. So enjoy and keep it impossible. We're going to talk about the fourth Mission Impossible movie, directed by Brad Bird, who very famously directed the animated Pixar movies, the two Incredibles films, Incredibles, Ratatouille, and another one I'm forgetting.
Incredibles 2.
No, I know. I mentioned that. There was another one. I forget.
Well, I don't know if it's his other beloved animated movie is not Pixar.
Oh, no, it's Iron Giant. Yeah, it was not Pixar.
Yeah. Right.
And this movie reminded me, because we talked about Michael Giacchino last week, who had done the score for J.J. Abrams' Mission Impossible 3. But he had also done the theme to Incredibles. And this movie reminded me that the Mission Impossible theme and the Incredibles theme are very similar in style, and that and that Brad Bird may have been going for, when he wanted a theme for Incredibles, a Mission Impossible type score.
I mentioned that a little bit, Matt. No, because obviously there's a big love for like The Incredibles. While it is a superhero movie, also has this spy dynamic that the score leans heavily into. Feels like a '60s spy score, which is clearly and
the style of that world is very '60s too. Anyway.
Yeah.
Like the gadgets look like they did. The sci-fi looks like it did in the '50s and '60s. Like the robots, everything. So.
And then Giacchino had done that movie with Brad Bird already. But then this movie was like, this is a movie that it would have been strange if Michael Giacchino didn't do, not just because he did 3, because, again, composers hadn't returned before for this series, but also because he had worked with Brad Bird, and even before 3, he'd worked with J.J. Abrams on Alias and Lost, and Abrams, again, was producing this movie. Again, Brad Robot is now kind of took over producing this series with Cruise from 3 on. It all worked together.
A few interesting things before we get into the story of this movie is that, maybe this is the most runningest movie. I don't know. Every movie from now on,
I believe this this is one where this episode I will again give a blanket thank you, shout out, and recommendation to the Light the Fuse podcast, who named themselves after a line from this movie, because they had like a 3-part interview with Brad Bird, who didn't do commentary on the movie, and so they kind of joked, but it's true. Their 3-part interview is kind of like the commentary that didn't happen, and including talking to him about how they've tried to clock all his running in all the movies, and this is his most runningest movie.
Okay, so this is his most runningest movie, but I think that third movie is kind of what kicked off the Tom Cruise runs thing. Like, he's run in movies before, but I think Mission Impossible 3 was when he really started to run, and everyone's like, hey, we got to get Tom Cruise running in this movie, or else why have Tom Cruise in a movie? And specifically, even the end of this movie being another foot chase of sorts, mirroring 3, was like, well, that's the most exciting thing we can do, is have Tom Cruise run, so why not have him do it in the middle of the movie and the end of the movie? So,
sure.
Let's get him running as much as possible. Running and dangling are what Tom Cruise does best, so let's have him way up high and then run way down low. Or run down a building. Like, anywhere he can run, let's have him run.
Right.
Secondly, another gap between this was 5 years. 5 years between this and 3, so we're still...
Until and after this is when this series starts to have normal franchise gaps of like 3 years. But yeah, these first four are so spread out, like just dramatically spread out for a giant, for like what had become one of Paramount's only kind of big tentpole series, along with Transformers at this point.
And this movie also benefited greatly from and also heightened the awareness of IMAX, which was a big deal at this around this time, sort of about a decade ago or over a decade ago, where people were going to see movies in IMAX. People were directors were actively filming a lot of scenes in IMAX and foregoing 3D, which was almost sort of petering out at this point.
And Dark Knight, which is funny because Dark Knight predates Avatar, but that was one of the first like big studio tentpole movies to have sequences, not whole movie, and the same for this one, but key sequences and shots shot in IMAX. And in fact, they said how they talked to the Dark Knight crew when they made this movie because they were going to be doing stuff in IMAX.
And this movie, I really like this movie. I don't know if I love it as much as you do, Eric, but I really like this movie. There is an element of this movie that where I do and I don't appreciate what they do with Julia. Like I sort of 50-50. Because at first, it seems like they Newton Hicks Julia really hard. But because there's a throwaway line like, well, after his wife left him or something like that, and it feels like they if you've seen Alien 3, you know that the two of the big parts of Aliens that worked really well were Hicks and obviously Ripley's surrogate mother protection of little Newt. And they killed him off at the beginning of Alien 3. Spoilers for Alien 3. Right at the beginning. And so the emotional stakes that you had that worked so well in the previous film, they rob you of and sort of negate as you enter the third movie. And that none of that is continuing on in this saga. And it really can sour you on a story. And so, yeah, they took the biggest part maybe of Mission Impossible 3, which was the whole crux of his emotional storyline, which was his love of Julia, wanting to marry her, wanting to have a life with her, and can he have a life? And then at the beginning of this, it's like, oh, you can't.
Right.
But they also don't bury it, right? So not only is there a throwaway line where it's like, well, after his wife left him, but then there's a funny moment a little while in where Benji's like, hey, I'm sorry about what happened to you and Julie. So it's not something that's like people are shutting up about. They're actively talking about it. Then it becomes more of a storyline point later when you learn about Brandt and what his backstory is and stuff like that. So they're doing that, but they're also making it part of the story. So it's not like that's in the past and now we're moving forward. They're still weaving it into everything. So that works, but there's still a part of me that does feel like at this point in the franchise, just a Ghost Protocol, I was like, oh, okay, well, I still like this, but I didn't like it as much as that storyline from the previous movie. But that being said, this movie also, it has high stakes and it has moments of danger, obviously, but it is tonally a little lighter. Like, even given, if I told you what happens in this movie, you're like, it is tonally lighter? I'm like, yeah, it is. It's like, there's more comedy, there's more levity, there is a little bit more, Brad Bird brings a little bit less grit in a way, and a little more, even the villain in this is a little more mustache twirling, and not as engaging, or like he's a presence, but he's not like Philip Seymour Hoffman, but everything's a little more heightened. Like, I don't know what a nuclear endgame guy is. It sounds very arch villain. It sounds very,
I think with him
less ripped from the headlines.
With Hendricks, and I know they can. There's one of the deleted scenes is like would have been the opening with him, and I think there was more stuff with him beyond that that got cut. That because I think the idea of Hendricks is a guy who was supposed to be like doomsday scenarios, and basically came to the decision that we're so screwed because war is so inevitable. We keep going to war. that I'm just going to cause the nuclear holocaust because that will allow us to move on. The only way we will move on is the remnants of humanity to like move on after they almost destroy each other. I think was the idea with Hendrix.
No,
But
I
very little
understand that
that.
idea. It is just such a
Yeah.
it is a very James Bondian villain. And I'm talking about James Bond villains along the lines of Drax and Stromberg from the two
Yeah.
back-to-back Roger Moore movies, Spider
Yeah.
Love Me and Moonraker, who were trying to destroy the world so that one wanted to create a utopia under the water, the other one wanted
Yeah.
to create a utopia in space. It's the same guy. But it's very what a lot of people think Bond villains are.
Right, right. And I think the attempts to deepen him with these extra scenes, I don't think that anyone was really satisfied with, so they cut them, so you're left with a very just like, yeah, this is what he's doing. Yeah, this movie, this is my favorite, I think, still. Again, when we rewatch 5 and 6, we'll see how I decide. Even though I think 3 is so great, and 3 does, I think, have the most emotional stakes of them all. And it's funny with the whole Julia thing because I totally agree with you. I remember watching this the first time, and I knew she wasn't in the movie. And these movies have been so standalone, but then 3 felt like it would be impossible, no pun intended, to be standalone after 3 would be extremely difficult. So it's like they kind of had their cake.
It's not Mission Impossible. It's Mission Extremely Difficult.
That's right. They had their cake and eat it too here because it felt like they wanted to do another standalone adventure, but they also realized they couldn't ignore 3. So they're kind of it's a fine line they're treading. And I do want to let's jump ahead here for a second into some behind the scenes stuff because I do think it's sort of the most fascinating. It's a fascinating thing about this movie that I didn't know until a year or two ago, which is this movie is written by Josh Applebaum and Andre Nemec, who are, again, Alias writers, like Orsi and Kurtzman. And they came up, they wrote the script. It's their story. They were there on set at the beginning. Then they went off and did a pilot, and they came back later. But what I didn't know for a long time about this movie is this is the movie where Christopher McQuarrie enters the Mission Impossible series. Because several weeks into filming, again, going back, we mentioned this before, how Hollywood movies are a mess, when something like Rise of Skywalker happens and you don't like the final product, you go, see, why didn't they have it worked out ahead of time? And they almost never do, and even the ones you love almost never do. So this movie, by all accounts, was a huge mess while they were making it. One of the more dramatic, here's our set pieces, those are locked in, but we do not have the connective tissue worked out here. And Christopher McQuarrie, who had only worked with Cruise once at this point, I think, on Valkyrie, but was about to become like Cruise's every movie I want him there guy, was brought in mid-production while they're filming to fix things and work out things and get character arcs more on track. And Matt, it turns out he did something I will be so thankful for him forever, which is he unkilled Julia. Julia was
Oh, you dropped out.
fully supposed to be Hicks and Newton.
Okay, so okay, she
Did
was.
you hear me?
No, I mean I got the idea of what you were going to say. Is that she was like
She was
originally
supposed to
she
be
was dead. Okay.
She was originally dead, and it was funny because he said, from his point of view, first of all, it brings this darkness to the movie that inescapable. Like, his wife is dead. Brant was, kind of sort of feels responsible, and even if he's let off the hook by Ethan at the end, he still has that weight on. Like, it just puts this darkness on the movie. Simon Pegg, and which makes sense because Simon Pegg, being sort of the geeky movie guy in real life, said this is Hicks and Newt. He also brought up fridging, the idea of
Okay.
Killing a female character just to motivate the male character that in no way gives her story any real. And so it was Christopher McQuarrie who said she can't be dead. She's alive, and changed the story so that she was alive and allowed for her to actually appear at the end of the movie. So we can continuing forward, but I just wanted to throw that out there because when you bring up the Julia of it all,
it's really cool to know. Christopher McQuarrie, everyone, just for those who might not know, sort of got notoriety first for writing The Usual Suspects.
Yep.
Then he wrote some other things. You mentioned Valkyrie already, if we're talking about the Bryan Singer connection here. Mm-hmm. And Way of the Gun, which I thought was an amusing film. But then
which was the first film he directed.
Yeah, well, then directly after this movie, Cruise would go to the written and directed film by Christopher McQuarrie, Jack Reacher, which was a franchise that never quite took off, and it lasted 2 movies. And now there's going to be a TV show, right? Yes.
Yes.
So, because it's based on a book series, so they want to use this property and make a TV show. Anyway, but then, since then, Christopher McQuarrie wrote like Edge of Tomorrow. And yeah, like you said, is there for cruise movies.
Every cruise movie. Like, they'll announce Top Gun 2, and Christopher McQuarrie isn't part of it, and then guess what? He ends up being part of it. Because Cruise basically won't do a movie at this point without McQuarrie's involvement. Like, he just really counts on him. I think he just trusts him implicitly and really likes his, again, getting ahead. There's a reason McQuarrie became the first person to direct more than one of these things. And I think it was just Cruise being insistent, being like, yeah, this is my guy.
Yeah, he'll wind up directing 4 of them in the end.
Yes, yeah.
Back to back, yeah.
He entered the series here. And we'll talk about, there's actually one other big writer that was involved in this movie, but we'll talk about that later.
All right, we can go into this movie again. It's your favorite, so maybe we talk about it for a long, long time, but let's see. Tom Cruise has the Mission Impossible hair. It's Mission Impossible 2 hair, sorry. So he's back to the shag, which is funny because they do a big sort of the rock climbing callback when we're talking about him scaling the walls of that very famous Dubai hotel. What's it called? The Burj. I'll figure it out. Burj Khalifa.
Burj Khalifa, yes.
The tallest building in the world, I believe. Still, things are always out towering each other. I think it's still the tallest building in the world. Mission Impossible 2 hair. We've got a fun opening before, and we're talking about the prison escape too, but also before that, we got another Abrams verse character in the form of Josh Holloway playing a character named Trevor Hannaway, who has a really cool moment shooting 2 guys while falling off a building, but then gets immediately killed afterwards. Fortunately, he gets a little more screen time during a flashback sequence in a few minutes when Agent Carter is recounting.
Maybe I'll mix things up here a little bit and not say everything for the end, and I'll mention here he was going to have a huge action sequence to open this movie. A huge, in the snow, badass, doing all this stuff thing. But because they filmed all his stuff last, basically at that point they were over budget. The movie was going to be long as it is. And so it got cut down, and he gets just kind of the one big cool stunt. Although it is a very cool stunt because it's like he throws the thing down ahead of him, turns around, and shoots the guys.
Is he on that Kevin Costner show?
He is, I believe. There's so many people in that show. Even isn't Wes Bentley?
No, he is. He I know, yeah. And Josh Lucas.
Holloway joined, I think. Maybe he wasn't there initially. But yeah, it's funny because another lost cast member 3 in a row, but also the second Mission Impossible movie in a row to have a significant actor from a J.J. Abrams show play a IMF agent who dies very quickly after Kerry Russell.
But it's you would learn later when Agent Carter, when Paula Patton is talking about what happened, that his little contact lens caught the assassin's face and it showed up on his phone. But when you're watching it at first, you're like, does he have the assassin app? Because it just pops up where it's it's So I want to believe he's on that Kevin Costner show because he's somebody post Lost who I wish wanted more success in other shows. Michael Emerson found along other shows to be on, obviously Person of Interest. Terry O'Quinn never quite capitalized off that. Some people just didn't move on to other things.
Terry O'Quinn was on that show. What was that show he was on? Was it Goliath? It's these people.
No, he was on a different show on Amazon, I think.
Okay, yeah. Patriot,
yes.
Right? And Josh Holloway had Colony for a couple years.
That's right. He was on College. I was thinking of Intelligence, which lasted only a few episodes on CBS. Mm-hmm. He did Colony for 2 seasons. So then we get to Ethan in prison. Mm-hmm. Where it's Ethan, even though you don't see his face. They save the reveal for a bit where, you think he's bouncing a ball off the wall and he's bouncing a rock. I don't know what that was meant to be. Like, he's so cool he can bounce a rock 3 times off a wall.
Sure.
But this is played. It's exciting, but it's also we go from sort of this death to is exciting but comedic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it has to do with Simon Pegg. I don't think you can have Simon Pegg and not use him to lighten up a scene in some way anyway. But Benji is in the field. You learn very quickly that Tom Cruise was surprised to see him there. He had passed his field exam. Not Tom Cruise,
Yeah.
Ethan Hunt. Same person. Anyway, this is all happening in Moscow, and he's being freed from jail by Carter and Dunn. Benji is there,
Mm-hmm.
but not before he saves another guy. I didn't do the legwork on this because I was too lazy, Eric. The guy who knows him in prison knows him as Sergey. Was that
Yes.
the alias that he used in the beginning? Okay, so the beginning of Mission Impossible 2, when Sean Ambrose is faking being Ethan Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the name that the guy thought his name was? Sergey? Is that like his?
Ah, I don't remember that. I'd have to check that. That'd be fun if it were, but I don't know for sure if that is. Uh, and here's my fun fact on this one is just again because this movie is being dramatically overhauled as they're making it. That the actor playing Bogdan, his prison buddy, was like a local. They shot in the Czech Republic that part. That guy, I think that's where they shot that. But anyway, he was a local guy who was hired who suddenly had a way more important role than he thought he was auditioning for, even coming back later in the movie.
Well, let's talk about that coming back
jackpot.
later. We'll talk about coming back later part a little bit, skipping way to the end. That scene is a little bit of a letdown because Tom Cruise goes to some guy that looks like Alexander Godunov. He gets to put this mask on. It feels like a Max moment. It feels like he's being led to somebody that should be either a callback to someone from a previous movie or a fun cameo by an actor that we know. And then he goes and it's just some guy.
So then since you brought that up, I will say this: you kind of just jumped over it, Matt. There is a returning character from the first movie in this movie. Do you know who it is?
Well, not this guy.
Not that guy. You just mentioned him. The Alexander Godunov looking dude was
Oh.
in the first movie, and he worked for Max. That was supposed to be Max, and it was a Betsy Palmer situation. She wasn't getting offered the money she wanted, Vanessa Redgrave.
Okay, so it was supposed to be Max. I did not recognize the
To the
Godunov
point
guy
that
as
it's her
Max
long-haired
Lackey.
henchman who still had the long hair many years later, who appears in that moment. But yes, this was the first time I watched the movie knowing that. Again, from that not recent reason for me, Brad Bird interview.
Okay, so there was a reason it felt like it was supposed to be a more important reveal than it was, and it was just some guy with glasses.
It was supposed to be Max, and again, during so much so that they shot the henchman.
Yeah.
But then Vanessa Redgrave, while they were making the movie, they're trying to make her deal, and she felt they weren't offering her enough money, and so turned it down. So it didn't. Suddenly, it was not the return of Max. It becomes random arms dealer.
Eric, this is when you bring Billy back. I'm just saying that there's you can bring somebody in this situation.
Right.
Also, bring Luther in. I don't know, bring somebody in. Like, it doesn't work, but like everyone's been disavowed at that point. You don't just have it be like some schmo that that's not even like a recognizable character actor.
I know.
Like, yeah, where's Paul Giamatti? Like, just bring someone in. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that even though it opens with an IMF agent getting killed, like I was saying, even with the stakes as high and there still being outright murder, it's a much lighter movie, especially if you look at how 3 opens. Like,
oh yeah, no, for sure. And again, this is all by design because I will say, we're talking about how 3 had these big director changes with Fincher and Carnahan to Abrams, but it seemed like 3, obviously, again, as we joked with Fincher, it was always intended to be a darker movie, and even with Abrams directing, it was. And with this one, they actually said Cruise wanted it to be a lighter movie. And
it made a lot more money. It made almost not twice as much, but almost twice as much. And so they seem to really have settled in on the tone that works best for this series with this movie. And I think this is basically what you kind of see going forward is more of the balance between, especially with Simon Pegg part of the team. Like with Simon Pegg out in the field, you get a lot more opportunity to make things lighter and to have somebody say something at least to break the tension in a certain moment. Mm-hmm. And this movie is the first in a while, because the third movie had that great Vatican City sequence where it's like you said, the crowd you saw it with, they cheered after it was over just because it was a fun heist, right? And then this is the movie where like they're immediately just no heist goes right. Nothing in this movie goes where they're like they drive away on a boat and we did it. You know,
and that was another mandate. That was something Brad Bird really wanted to do. You said heist, but he actually brought up, but I guess it's all one and the same. His big thing was none of the technology was going to work for them in this movie. It would all be really high tech, cool stuff that would then fail.
Yeah,
including the fact that they never wear a mask because of that.
Yeah, so it was really an interesting element of this movie because they don't even get one. The only successful op they have in this movie is the prison break at the beginning.
Yes.
And even that goes sideways in a little way because Ethan wants to rescue this other guy. But then they go right to, we get a big one right away because they're looking for this guy named Cobalt and there's nuclear launch codes, yada, yada, yada.
Wait, Matt, but we've skipped over the most important thing about this movie.
The most important thing about this movie?
They brought back going through the whole movie in the opening credits finally, and I was extremely happy.
Yeah, and they did it in an interesting way because it wasn't like a montage. They sort of animated it into the sequence. Does that sound right?
Yep.
I don't know if I'm describing it right.
They were shooting the original intention was actually he was shooting IMAX of every sequence they wanted to put in the opening credits. They were using the IMAX camera to shoot extra footage of that ended up falling by the wayside. The opening credits are not in IMAX when you saw it in IMAX. And the IMAX camera is, notoriously huge, cumbersome, loud, and hard to use. There's a reason you don't see entire movies shot in IMAX still very, very much. So they didn't end up doing exactly what he wanted to do, but it still was like, it's like we're seeing alternate takes and like, it's different than just a montage. It's a full and it's following the fuse. He really wanted to do that because the opening credits of the TV show would have the fuse burning the whole time. They're really cool, and I loved because it was such a thing I loved about the first movie and was really bummed the second and third didn't, that it came back with the fourth one. That is the most important thing.
Okay, well, we can stop talking about the movie if that was the most important thing.
Yes.
But yeah, so they're like another impenetrable fortress town of like, we got, and time is of the essence. So we're like, we have 5 hours to break into the Kremlin. So they're aiming high right out of the gate where this trio, who Tom Cruise just like, he knows Benji, but he's never worked with him. He's never met Agent Carter before. And this is not Agent Carter from the MCU. This is Paula Patton in a fun role. Skipping way to the end, Eric, I really love how much you feel like the movie knows where it wants to go going forward because they mentioned the Syndicate right on the way out. But he's like, yeah, this team forever, man. Nothing's gonna ever split us up because we're a forever team, and they all take their phones, and Brant finally takes his phone, and then it's like, yeah, we'll never see this team again.
We see more of that team than we do the other team. More of that team is back in the next movie than we see.
I know. I just feel like
yeah.
They really did try to set us up. I don't know what was going on with Paula Patton in the next movie or what happened.
I'll save that for the next podcast.
All right. So, and because I mostly really wanted to see more of Paula Patton in this franchise, if not because I wanted to see her in a storyline that didn't have to do with, I guess, her dead boyfriend. She was his handler, but like they were romantically linked, right? Her and Hanaway.
Yeah, I thought that was yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't just guilt about like getting someone killed like Ethan had for Agent Ferris. There is that, but also I think there were a couple. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to see her outside of the sphere of revenge, wanting revenge.
Right. And
we never get that. Anyway, so into the Kremlin, fun Ethan and Benji. Like you said, no masks in this movie. Even Tom Cruise impersonating the general or whoever it was is just him with makeup on, more like what we expected from the first movie. Not even a mask rip-off. When he takes the makeup off, it's like just a nose, like he literally just takes off stage makeup.
And they begin a fun runner here of Benji really wanting to wear masks now that he's out in the field. He keeps bringing up like masks. We're going to do masks, right? Or too bad you didn't get the mask on this one.
Yeah, and they even had the mask box, the mask maker.
Mm-hmm.
And no masks. Well, except, and then, the only person wearing a mask is later in the movie is Hendricks himself. I don't know why he was wearing a mask, Eric. We'll get to that, but
Yep.
so maybe you can answer it for me. Anyway, they have that fun hologram wall that they put up in the hallway to make the guard think that he's looking into nothing. They fake basically a reality, and then they push it forward on him, and
It's very fun, very animation like, as many people have noted. But it also does the thing that I really liked in the third one too, which is it feels credible within this world as far as what the rules are, because they do the really cool thing of it only supposed to work with one person's perspective, and so they get found out because the other guy comes in.
yeah,
And the technology can't figure out who it's supposed to be focusing on. So I thought that was like a cool touch that again creates, bigger than life technology that we still understand. Sort of this is how it works, and this is how you could screw it up.
yeah. It's a everything goes wrong, like you said, technology wise, and it's cool to know that that was specifically by design, that it was technology that was messing up on them. And then we get the whole basically Kremlin exploding, the big cinch of the movie, which is the big visual that you see in the trailer. The big thing that kicks off the story is that Hendricks, in his attempt to cover up his own identity, frames the IMF too. So we talk about, usually it's Ethan who's being framed, and in this movie they take it so he's been framed twice now in the course of 3 movies. And in this one, they go so far as to frame the entire IMF to the point where the American government, we hear, has to disavow them completely back at home and label them all as terrorists.
Yes, as an organization. Cool little, just a little fun thing that I know that I just recently learned is Hendricks. You see, he's hidden in when Ethan and Benji get through security, when they have to like ask him to run it again. Because the Hendricks is there. He's like walking ahead of them, kind of like Easter
it's like one of the ghosts in The Haunting of Hill House.
Yes. It's just set up that he's there later. It's like, oh, if you're looking carefully, we already kind of established he was there in the building.
By the way, watching Haunting of Bly Manor and any of these haunted, like even if I was watching Hill House, it's such a weird thing watching during COVID times, watching a story where ghosts are trapped in a house. Yeah. It's just like, from a quarantine standpoint, it's like not being able to ever leave. Anyway.
I'll understand.
So Tom Cruise runs. He ran in the prison. Now he's running again away from the explosion. And he's immediately big, visually impressive. Still looks good. We're still talking about effects that were only 9 years ago, but it still looks good. The Kremlin explosion. And he's arrested. And, he wakes up in the hospital, mild concussion after reading some lips. He knows that he has a mild concussion. He's handcuffed, and then I don't think he's a cop, but I think he's more of like his
character.
Well, I guess it would be like the Russian equivalent of the FBI or even the CIA. I don't know, but it's somebody who can go to other countries very easily and extend his jurisdiction. So this isn't just a cop, even though he feels like a cop. He feels like a local cop, but. Especially
his role in the movie is to be sort of a traditional. Yeah, his role in the movie is to be like the cop who is just trying to do his job. He's not a bad guy, but he thinks Ethan's up to doing bad stuff.
I just think that there's a little bit of there's too big a gap between what they think Ethan did and the security measures to control Ethan in that hospital room where he's just on a gurney handcuffed. And that's it, with one dude. And it feels like he should be in a separate wing, surrounded by guard. This is a terrorist who blew up the Kremlin. It wouldn't just be, Jim Gordon while he's still a detective, like guarding him.
Right.
So, but Tom Cruise runs, or he jumps too. And again, we're still, even after all this, we still get these moments of levity where there's a fun scene on the hospital window ledge where he's like, go ahead and jump.
It's a fun scene that also, again, this movie, really, after 3 and now 4 have continued, Ethan has the fallible superhero. And even when he does this freaking amazing, like, takes his belt and whips it around the power line and goes down, when he jumps on the van, he doesn't do it perfectly. He rolls off and he's kind of stunned when he, like, hits the ground. And those little moments that I definitely appreciate.
Yeah, like he's going to get fucked up. Like with that, 3 establishes this. He's going to
Yes.
get banged up, and that's another thing we can owe to 3 is that he's going to go through this with broken bones and a lot of blood loss. So then we get we get a new boss, but we also immediately find out why there's a new boss in the next movie. And Tom Wilkinson has a cameo. The great Tom Wilkinson, who played a character named Matt Fowler in The Bedroom.
Yes, he did.
Because if you ever Google Matt Fowler, at least if you did 10 years ago, a lot of it was In the Bedroom with Tom Wilkinson and Sissy Spacek. So he's there. He's the Mr. Secretary, and he gets he runs down the whole. He gets to say Ghost Protocol.
Yes.
I think
Which,
that's
by
how
the way, they didn't know the title of this movie for a while. So when they decided they didn't want it to be 4, they're like, "What's the title?" And then they decided, like, that line. The line came before the title.
Okay.
And they were like, "Okay, what's their title?" Well, he says Ghost Protocol. That's a cool saying. And that's how it became the title.
And we meet him and Brandt, and then they're immediately attacked, though, and killed by the cops. Right? Like, the cops go and assassinate the secretary?
I mean, I guess well, yeah.
That seemed a little, that felt like it should have been Hendrix men.
Right. Because
But it wasn't.
Guy whose name we're forgetting, but the heroic Russian copish guy who's probably not supposed to be a cop, he shows up and sort of stops them from shooting. But yeah, it was sort of like Russian guys who, yes, at this point, Ethan is a very wanted man. But since he got in a car and they can't really see who he's in the car with, would they have just shot?
They would know it's the secretary's car. Maybe not. Anyways,
I know because he's not supposed to. Remember, he's not supposed to be there.
Okay,
he says they wouldn't know it's the secretary's car. You still think would they see if they could try to take him without shooting into the car? But yeah, Tom Wilkinson, great actor, who does a very good job because it's a heavy lifting scene. He's only in one scene. He has to establish not only is he Ethan's boss, but they have like a history. He considers him a friend. He trusts him. So Tom Wilkinson's great to come in and do that. Although it is funny, I'm like, it could have been Hopkins or Fishburne, if they.
There was no reason why they couldn't have brought somebody back for a fun cameo. Though, as we saw with Max, maybe they didn't have cameo budget. I don't know.
right.
Like Hopkins would have been expensive too. So maybe more than Redgrave. Let's see.
And Brandt, who is introduced as an analyst, so it's like, oh, is he like Jack Ryan?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. Is he's supposed to know everyone's name? And then Ethan, even in this scene, which is serious and Ghost Protocol is said, and it sets up the entire rest of the movie's premise. Ethan draws a very fast caricature on his hand, and it's a funny moment. That he has. So he's perfect in so many different like skills that would take decades to be perfect at. So
right. And it's a doubly fun moment. It's funny that he does it, and then Brandt is like, "Well, it's a crude drawing," so they have Brandt kind of giving him shit on something that clearly is impressive. That he still like draws a pretty good damn likeness of someone on his hand.
Somebody who we saw very briefly too. That's the other thing. Is that you understand that Ethan Hunt's abilities are to basically memorize everyone's face when he walks in a room. So now they're on the run. Car goes in the water. It's just Ethan and Brandt, who at this point who's also adding, like Benji, Brandt is also adding comedy too, because he is as far as we know at this point, someone who doesn't belong in the field. Like this is a nerd. This is a desk jockey and analyst. But if we know anything about Jack Ryan, who's always in the field and is pretty good in a firefight, that this illusion would soon be dispelled. Let's see. So then they go on the moving. They have to do the eye scan to get on the train, and when they get on the train, there's a little base inside,
which is a very fun and funny moment as well, because the racing to finish that to get on, and then he's like, retinal scan. Like he has to go back and finish the retinal scan to get in.
Yeah, so it's like the stakes are so high, but the movie is still maintaining this light tone. And then we get on the train, and that's where Ethan points at all of the screens. And I can only think of like he has to lay out the next heist, he has to lay out the next mission, which will take them to Dubai. But I always go back to what you said about people not being able to follow the first Mission Impossible movie. So he's like, this guy is going to sell codes to this person, who's going to go to give them to this person, and he's like has screens set up with all of their faces, so that he can because I will say this, you and I can follow this, and everyone listening can too. But yeah, this was way more complicated than the first movie, where they go into that hotel. And Benji even says, so you're going to change the infrastructure of a hotel to fake two different meetings with two different people. And and then everything going wrong and them having to improvise and change everything going forward. That, like, I don't know what audiences in, the 90s, if they didn't smarten up, they would be totally lost in this movie.
Right. Of course, we'll talk about him climbing the building, but yeah, everything about this it's again a very well constructed sequence, because you take away him climbing on the building, and what you have is an intricate and clever thing about the fact that they're doubling a meeting. I know Brad Bird personally was very excited about the shot where you go up through the two floors and you see them walking in, like the meeting happening parallel to each other. Just that idea he really liked, and it's a cool idea. And how she's listening to what's happening and kind of using the cues of what's being said.
Well, he takes pictures with his eyes to replicate the codes, and it prints out in her case. It's all really well done. Again, they're doing all of this after things go wrong. So, not only does he have to access the server room from outside the building, but then the masks don't work ultimately, and they have to just take a leap of faith to the point where we're just hoping no one's ever met each other, and they won't recognize anything. And but yeah, let's talk about the climb. This is Tom Cruise actively on the side of this hotel. He is there in person, on location, on the side of it. They CGI'd out the cables, so it's not like he was free falling or free hanging. He was very protected. But
what a wimp!
What a wimp! But yeah, that is him on the side of this building. It was not green screen.
It's and this is like, let's say, this movie in general, but this stunt specifically is what solidified this series. And much in the way that's like this strange thing where the Fast and Furious series became what we now know with Fast 5. Mission Impossible became what we now know as Mission Impossible with the fourth movie. But specifically, I'd also say this sequence, because no matter what you thought of these movies or Tom Cruise or anything, this was an attention getter. That Tom Cruise himself, one of the most famous people in the world, was willing to climb on the tallest building in the world for this movie sequence, was just a holy shit thing. Got them a ton of attention, and rightfully so. It looks amazing. It was, of course, an IMAX sequence. Watching it at home, you can't replicate an IMAX sequence, but still those shots where you're shooting straight down at him, just with you see just way below the street and the cars, and knowing that's really him is pretty fantastic. And yeah, really, this is like we said, the third movie sets into place a lot of stuff for the series going forward and is super important to the series. The fourth one is this is 100% solidified. This is what we're doing, and this sequence becoming it's funny, the rock climbing sequence is the prototype for this, I guess, in the second one, but this really becomes there has to be something that Tom Cruise will do that's just absolutely insane for an actor to do. And here it is.
And but also thematically it works because of the rock climbing sequence into it is a callback, it is a nod for him to do something like this. And so then we talk about, there's a sandstorm on the horizon, which is a fun thing because for the audience, just because it's going to play in and you just don't know how and when.
And it doesn't play in the way you expect, because it does not happen while he's still on the side of the building.
Well, Benji even says you have time. Or somebody says that. But it's... Benji does, yeah. So, then you go to the failing technology. Then you go to just all the things that can go wrong. Like a glove doesn't work. And I do also appreciate Benji being the new Hasta Lasagna guy, because he's being blue is glue, red is dead. He's the color-coded rules for the technology, so it's easy to remember. Then
and it's all just sort of fun, funny, and thrilling. watching it again, I was just like, wow, this is so great. And it's really funny, obviously, when Brandt is like, your line is not long enough. And he goes, no shit. First of all, it's just a funny part. Second of all, it's like an Ethan Hunt humanizing moment that he would say that, and he's not like stoic. And then it's just incredibly exciting when he does the running leap, and they have to pull him in. They have to save him at that point. So it's just all kind of, it's pretty amazing. Still watching it again, I was like, damn, this is an amazing sequence.
And then I guess I was only on Wikipedia, so who knows, but him doing these stunts like this inspired Paula Patton and Jeremy Renner to do their own stunts in this hotel sequence where they're fighting. They don't dangle, but they're fighting stuff.
And even, I will say, like, again, because everything is on this sort of crazy, Tom Cruise ruins the curve for himself and for everyone else.
Right.
But when I was watching the behind the scenes for this, and of course it's like insane, and they talk about just Tom Cruise doing all this stuff and hanging out there. But even when they were shooting they show some of the behind the scenes of when Brandt and Carter save him, and Jeremy Renner is like hanging out that window of the real Burj Khalifa. And of course, yes, his body's not fully out like Tom Cruise, but I'm like, Jesus, that must be scary to like be hanging out and looking straight down, and again, not something an actor would normally do. But of course, I think I think they even talked about it. I think Brad Bird said, like, of course there becomes then like a friendly competition. And he remembers like Jeremy Renner and Tom Cruise both like doing big stretches before they were going to run after the train together.
It's like Vince McMahon. It's hard when the leader of a project is like, I won't ask you to do anything I won't do. And then you're like, oh no, right. Like now I have to do everything.
And I will do insane shit. Yeah.
So yeah, just the whole Burj Khalifa hotel sequence in general it's thrilling to the eyes. It has huge, IMAX spectacle qualities to it, just from the wall climb and then the sandstorm. But then the smaller moments, the heist moments, the con artist moments inside too work well. So it's a great mix of all of that. And then if you add on top of that, everything going wrong that can kind of go wrong, to the point where after this mission, the team implodes because, the only thing that kept them going was them being able to improvise on the fly. And that's sort of the strength of this movie, is that's what the team has to do because of the situation they're in, is that they have to use everything they have is what they've got, and they're disavowed, and they don't have the resources they normally do, et cetera, et cetera. And on top of that, the missions are just as impossible. That this all really works well. And then, the running sandstorm sequence looks amazing. Going into the car chase in there too. So they got both running and a car chase.
That's all. Yeah, it's unrelenting, right? Like you mentioned the sandstorm, how it does go right into that. And one thing you skipped over that I want to mention just quickly was we get the Paula Patton, Leah Seydoux, future Bond girl Leah Seydoux fight sequence in this, which is a really fun fight. I wish it was longer, but it's still a cool fight. And you were mentioning how like Tom Cruise inspiring them. It's funny because they mentioned how Paula Patton trained to fight for many months. And then Leah Seydoux kind of found out Paula Patton was training and was like, well, I want to do my fighting too. And so it all passes on, Matt, as everyone decides that they want to get in on the fighting and the action stuff.
Yeah, it's infectious. It spreads. Yeah, it's wanting to do your own stunts is a super spreader, as they say in the business. They don't say that at all, but I'm saying, but yeah. And look, Tom Cruise, who knows? He's very intense. He gives 150 million% to all of his movies, to the benefit of the movie, but maybe the detriment of his cast and also his family life and personal well-being. But he dives in, and so if you're somebody, that could be daunting and off-putting, or it can be motivating, and that's sort of what happened here. And
but it's also exciting, and that whole the foot chase and then the car chase. It has a freaking fantastic car flip when the car flips right by him.
It's all amazing. And why is Hendrix wearing a mask?
And so this is a funny thing because the guys who do the Light the Fuse podcast, who obviously, as you might expect, are very, 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 very into the Mission Impossible movies, more than you and I could be. joke about this a lot. They love Ghost Protocol, but they're like, we never understand why would he do that? Like, why would he put himself in danger? Like, why not just have Wistrom as right hand man go?
Especially since Wistrom exists. Like, because then later in the movie, he's with him. So
it's not like Wistrom's dead, or anything, or a fake identity. And so they asked Brad Bird, and I can't remember his answer, but I almost feel like the real answer is the rewrites kind of lost the plot on that. Again, Hendricks himself seems like the character they never cracked. Like, it's like they strengthened a lot with the rewrites and McQuarrie coming in, but it feels like Hendricks they didn't. So I feel like the reason he did that got lost. Like, I think that there's no good reason, because once upon a time they had a good reason, and I can't remember what Brad Bird's answer was. I'm sorry, but because he was asked directly about it, but I think he even kind of laughed it off, knowing it doesn't need to be there, and that was kind of one lingering thread of this movie getting rewritten a lot.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know, some shit.
Right.
Which is our favorite quote from the movie Go.
Yes.
Said by Breckenmeyer. Okay.
And then we go to not Max. Sadly, not Max.
Yeah. Then the another interesting element of this movie, and I think it's very much in the same Venn diagram as like everything going wrong, is like, yeah, the team implodes and they argue, and we just let this guy who was literally the guy we wanted to catch get away with the codes. And fortunately, because movies are movies and there's a third act, they're like, hey, the two things that the audience thinks he needed to launch the codes. There's actually a third thing too. So fortunately, we have a third chance to get him, or a second chance at least, and because he still needs a satellite. And they didn't mention that in any of the expository information previous, but it still works. But yeah, he goes to the guy who's clearly not Max, not even named Max. I wasn't, quick enough to pick up on that was Max's person, but because I was too busy thinking that they looked like whatever those weird virus characters the twins were from The Matrix Reloaded.
Right. Yeah, I think we just have to assume that in the years since the first movie, Max's long-haired guy has gone to work for another arms dealer who offered him more money.
Yeah, it's safe to assume. Again, should have been a character actor. Also, it was just a lot of setup. Not just the meeting him and wearing the mask, but like the phone calls. Where like Ethan's like, guaranteed he'll be there. And, and like, who is this? It's Luther, but it wasn't. So...
Although he is talking to Luther in the movie as well. Like, he's Luther is who he's supposed to be talking to earlier, I believe, as far as like someone who's helping him.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And let's see. And okay, so there's a whole thing, but the whole point is that now they have to get a satellite code from they have to go to Mumbai, so they have to go to India. And they have to go to this like entrepreneur dude, and she has to seduce him enough, to get the codes, like get him alone and get the codes, which is, you'll have to tell me if this plan worked or not. I can't remember. I feel like it didn't work at all, unless the whole point. I feel like the plan, like, I don't know. I'm also on the fence a little bit about how stumbly bumbly they make Carter in this situation. Where she seems a little inept, but it does sort of add a little bit to the comedy where she feels like the most seasoned member of this team aside from Ethan, but they kind of play her a little Benji in this scenario, and maybe it's just like maybe it's my own sexist hang-ups regarding female spies, where it's like she is the femme fatale in this situation, sort of like, Maggie Q in last movie, but I don't think they established enough with enough lines ahead of time to make us, to basically, she's like, hey, guess what? I am this is not what I'm trained for. Because we assume that all female spies are trained for the art of seduction.
Sure.
So it works, I think, with a little more lines from her.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I think like a little more setup, because we don't get a lot of character from her, aside from that she really hates the assassin that killed her boyfriend,
Right.
And I would have liked to have heard a little bit more from her, where it's like, hey, Ethan, because he's constantly supportive of her. It's like, you can do this, but there was never a line from her where she's like, I did not take seduction class. Like I don't, or I flunked it. Like I got an F minus in espionage sexiness. So anyway, but
also, by the way, we should mention by this point we know Brant's history with Ethan and Julia. He talks to Benji about it.
So he talks to both of them about it, right?
Oh yes, you're right. He talks to Carter as well after Ethan leaves for Not Max.
So this is when we learned, and then Benji is learning too, because he believed that they just split up. So you're wondering how the information trickled out, where Benji doesn't know that Julia was dead, but the whole point of that op was to make everyone think Julia was dead. But somehow he got the story, they split up. So I am wondering where the wires crossed, because I feel bad because, yeah, the person who had to sit with guilt for years over the fake death of Julia, obviously got the message that she was dead.
Right.
But Benji was able to live blissfully with because even
they broke up.
Well, the whole thing was like, what did Tom Cruise think in the Kremlin scene when Benji was like, "I'm sorry about what happened with you and Julia," because that was played for comedy, because Benji thought they split up, and Tom Cruise reacted to it like it was comedy in that moment. But literally, was Ethan thinking at that? I use their names interchangeably, obviously, but was Ethan thinking in that moment, wow, he sure is being comedically flippant about the death of my wife, who isn't dead, but you should think she's dead?
Right.
Does that make sense? So anyway.
No, it does. And I think it's funny, I guess, and it's funny, I'm more hyper aware of it having now learned so much about the making of this movie, but it's like, I think that's where the themes of this movie show, is because they were changing a lot on the fly. And like, there's one of the scenes that's deleted scenes you can watch is like an extension of, and it's not Julia specific, but it is kind of in a way, because it's the scene in the van after he's just rescued from the prison at the beginning and he's kind of meeting Carter for the first time. There was more to that scene originally about why was Ethan in prison? What was he doing? What was the mission Benji and Carter were on? How they were different missions, but they were really the same. And I think that's where you see the themes of this movie being rewritten, because including what led him to be in the prison, which we like kind of learned later was like for killing Serbians that seemed to be the ones who killed Julia, really had taken Julia. So
they did take her.
Yes.
Because that was sort of a really quick line too. So they did take her.
I believe
it wasn't all fake.
She was taken.
Okay, and he rescued her.
It was not all fake.
He rescued her off screen. Because that was
Decided
really a
that
throwaway line. Yeah. Okay, so she did get taken.
This is too dangerous.
Okay, so I feel like there was 2 or 3 more lines they needed for that, because it was just like she was taken. But that does make more sense to why he would, at that point, really distance himself. Like, your wife gets taken twice. He's like, we can't be married anymore. This is too dangerous, et cetera, et cetera. So that makes a little more sense why they're not together, in this movie. But it's all of it. I do like the element of basically Benji and Carter lost their Ethan. Mm-hmm. And so they go and get Ethan, who just also happens to be working the different side of the same problem.
Right.
And they didn't quite know it yet. But yeah, like they're working the Cobalt case from different angles, and they bring them in. And so the whole point here is Hendricks and Wistrom are, they take over the satellite. They fake a communication to a nuclear sub, get a missile launched at San Francisco. And at this point, they need the codes to the satellite. And we're talking about, funny moments between Benji and Brant, where Brant has to wear this magnet suit and get dangled down and, I'll catch you. And it's really, so there's a drop, and then there's the heat, and there's a funny exchange of dialogue. But then on the way out, like you said, the technology.
Brant gets his own huge sort of action sequence here. He gets the visual call back to Langley, because he gets to do his arms and legs outstretched when he goes to the bottom.
I think he kind of gets it twice.
Yeah.
Where he gets to like just miss the floor, and this place like something that could impale him. So, But when she gets the code from Brijnath and gives it to them, and Brant enters it into the system, whatever he has to enter, the 6-digit code, does it do anything good, or were they already too late? Like, did this mission fail completely? Or did they need it to find Hendricks' location?
I don't remember. That part I couldn't tell you.
I just would like this mission a lot more, of this final one, this little party thing at the end, if it wasn't a total failure. Like they got something.
Definitely, it's not a total failure, because the final thing is to disarm that, to stop that missile. Which
ultimately what they get is his location, and they can drive to him. But they didn't stop it.
And then it becomes a multifaceted thing again, because we're mentioning it without mentioning. This movie definitely continues a team dynamic even more than the third one, because they're there for the conclusion as well, unlike the last one. And they definitely get to all play a part in that, as far as needing that, because the briefcase won't work. I mean, it's a very funny beat when Ethan does the mission accomplished and it doesn't work until the power's turned back on and those things are pushed back in. He can't use that briefcase to stop the missile. So it's like, that's what they have to do at that point.
We should note that the guy playing Brijnath is a very famous Indian actor.
Well, it's Anil Kapoor, who Slumdog Millionaire, of course. He's the host in that. He was on a season of 24 and then starred in the Indian adaptation of 24 as their Jack Bauer surrogate character.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're mentioning the things we would have seen, obviously, but he's a star in India itself, like over 100 movies over there. So,
which, again, all these franchises do the thing of, they parallel the international market booming and the fact that you want to both go there and get familiar faces to help these movies be big everywhere.
Let's see. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And he also felt like, even if you didn't like, it's such an interesting scene, again played comedically, that if he wasn't somebody to somebody, if he wasn't somebody to someone, it would feel really weird.
Right.
Then we get another car chase into the foot chase. Again, ending the movie with a big Ethan Hunt race to the finish, with 100 things going wrong. So the other team have to deal with like a broken satellite board, and then the power going off, and a guy shooting at him with guns and stuff like that. So everything has to line up, and this is something we'll see happen in the later movies, where like this has to happen, then this has to happen, then this has to happen, and then you push the button, right? So, and all of them seem really hard to do, if not impossible.
And they again have, though I think, of course, we agree that Hendricks, although played by a great actor, Michael Nyqvist, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, who passed away, unfortunately, a couple years ago, also known as the villain in the first John Wick.
Nyqvist, I think so.
And starred in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy, the Swedish version. They do the thing where, again, to even the playing field for a final fight between Ethan and a guy who does not look like he could take on Ethan. In this case, the third one had a much even bigger with the bomb in his head that's making him hard to even like stand up. But here he gets his leg hurt pretty quickly, and he's like hobbling and jumping on one leg. So that kind of tries to even it out so that this guy can fight.
Yeah, I just think also it's funny because as impressive as the Dubai stuff, the whole, I don't know, it's like 25-minute sequence in Dubai. The standout thing, like years later, because I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, the one I will have seen, obviously, the most recently is Fallout. But the standout sequence in this movie for me has always been the car garage at the end. Like that stood out to me way more than the IMAX sequences. It's just like
interesting.
Like
I wouldn't say it stands out more to me, but
I just was so into
really
it.
Fun.
And like how you can have the final part of a movie just come down to two guys trying to get a briefcase in a really interesting surrounding where once again the technology keeps failing Ethan,
and it's like a very video game with these platforms that keep rising and falling.
Oh, it's so good, and that's also the other equalizer in the fight, right?
Yes.
And one of the equalizers in the fight are his leg gets hurt. He's not after Hendricks; he's after the case. So it's really just it's sort of
and
like
Hendricks knows that, so Hendricks is just trying to keep the case from.
That's all he's doing. He's not trying to beat Ethan. He's just trying to run down the clock. And to the point where, and that great finish where he swan dives and kills himself, not right away, but he takes the dive down, hits the car just to get the briefcase far enough away from Ethan that the time will run out. And and then you got the great car crash dive down to it's just all amazing. And that it was so much more memorable to me for whatever reason than the Dubai stuff, which was great, obviously. But
I'm the opposite on which is more memorable, but I love it. It's a great final sequence. It's a really cool place to have it set. And then like him, Ethan doing the crash down, counting on the airbag to save him. It also has a kind of great, wonderful, cruel thing to the bad guy, which is he lives just long enough to see Ethan succeed in stopping his life stream from happening.
No, I guess you got to have that, right? You don't want the guy dying thinking he won. Like, that's awful.
Right.
That's the worst.
And the mission accomplished thing is great too, because Ethan Hunt, as much as humor comes into these movies, Ethan Hunt is not like an 80s making pun one-liners guy. So the fact that the one time he does it, it doesn't work is a funny beat.
And obviously it's a callback to GW, doing the mission accomplished thing years after he did it. But still, I guess I can't put myself in the headspace of the time. I'm still pretty relevant. And it's still a funny moment, even when we watch it now.
I think no matter what, they probably would have thought to do it because of the title of the series,
And, so they win. Stop the, getting down to the last seconds where they deactivate the missile. It hits a building, goes into the bay, and everyone in San Francisco survives because of them. Now, catching up to what we were already talking about, the final sequence at the end. Now we get Luther's cameo, like real quick. And just to have him in there. I don't know what Ving Rhames was doing at the time, but I don't know if this was a rewrite or something, but he's been same guy for 4 movies now, even though he's barely in this one, he still counts.
Yeah, it was interesting. Here's my presumption of what happened, because the story excuse is, yes, Ethan, the beginning of the movie means that there's no IMF. He is sort of stuck with the team that saved him from jail, whether he wants them or not. That's the story excuse. You could still, A, Luther could have been there, and B, it's a movie, you could do whatever you want. Luther could have shown up. I think they wanted, I know they wanted more Simon Pegg, because Brad Bird was told, he mentioned, Simon Pegg's in this movie when he signed up. So there was a mandate to bring Simon Pegg back. Then it gets tricky, and I think even the movies have to deal with this after this, which is having 2 guys who are the techie.
How do you balance Luther and Benji? Yeah.
So I think that they had that issue, and they just decided to streamline it, but then they also realized if we don't have Luther in here at all, it's weird, because he has been the constant. So they decided to put in the cameo at the end, which I'm glad they did, because again, now he's in every movie besides along with Tom Cruise.
Okay, and now for the closing moment that makes what they did to Ethan and Julia mostly okay. Mm-hmm. I'm still not ideal in my eyes, but they got Michelle Monaghan back for a cameo and a shot where that they still love each other, and that neither one of them thinks the other one is fake dead. Like, he didn't fake his death either to make her think, like, move on with your life. Right. And that he can still appear in her life to such a degree that she can look out and see him watching her. Like, it's like I can never see her again. So they're still aware that they exist and that they love each other, and they can't walk up and have a conversation together. But I like the fact that I just really like the fact that he can watch her, but she can also look out and see him. And it's not like he has to hide. He has to duck behind a garbage can or something. He's like, oh shit, she saw me.
You're setting the episode perfectly, Matt, for ways that they realized they needed to improve this movie, fix this movie. Because there were reshoots, as there are with any big movies. Nothing, doesn't sound like there was any huge brand new sequences in the reshoots. In fact, Brad Bird says a lot of it was taking scenes they had and adding to them, embellishing them. And one of the big ones was the final scene. In fact, he said it was funny because they originally shot that on location with this great big pier. They didn't, and for the reshoots, he said they were in a tiny, dirty warehouse in downtown LA where they recreated just enough of corners to put behind the actors to cut in with what they had to use. Couple things interesting here are that the person who did the writing on the rewrites was Damon Lindelof. Again, it's so funny, these huge writers who get brought in as script doctors that we'll never know about. A lot of times this stuff never comes out about.
Right.
these writers that are paid a fortune to come something, or whether it be fix this sequence or do a polish or add a humor polish or whatever. But Lindelof was brought in to do some of the additional photography stuff. And one specific thing was the final scene, which they said a couple things they wanted to clear up were sort of Brant and Ethan talking through everything between them to make sort of everything okay between them. But the other thing I thought was fascinating that reshot was in the original way they shot it, Julia did not see him. It was just him watching her, and it adds so much. And you brought it up. It makes a big difference because if it's just him watching her, no matter what, it's a sad situation coming out of 3. But if it's just him watching her, it's extra sad. We don't quite know her perspective. It feels more stalkery and sad. But her seeing them sharing a smile helps a lot, both for us to feel okay and to feel okay for the characters. So I'm very glad that got changed.
Well, them smiling at each other makes you know that whatever this hard, awful decision and conversation they had to have, it wound up being completely mutual, right? Like,
right.
She understands, he understands, and that they can still walk away. And but he's watching her, so like you don't you move on too quick. No, I'm kidding, but like,
right.
So, but yeah, it really helps. Swallow, it makes that sideways pill a little easier to swallow, like as far as what they did with this movie. And I'm very happy that they did, and we'll see with other movies going forward. You know, it's super beneficial that they didn't make this standalone.
And just the evolution, the fact that this movie began filming with her really dead, and that thankfully got changed, and then she got the cameo, and then they reshot the cameo so she saw him. Like, they made all the right choices to how to fix what initially could have been very off-putting coming off of 3. And so I'm very glad all those things evolved the way they did.
Alrighty. Ghost Protocol.
Ghost Protocol, a movie I really love. And then only because I purposely peppered things then through, which I'll probably try to do with the other ones too. The only other thing I realized I didn't mention, which is the Burj Khalifa sequence again, that these movies, giant studio movies are made by so many people with so many ideas. The Burj Khalifa sequence exists because of J.J. Abrams, because when he was doing press for Star Trek in 2009, him and Brian Burke, one of the other heads of Bad Robot, who was an active producer on this, went to Dubai. And Dubai in general made Abrams go, wow, this is kind of amazing how they built this sort of amazing city in the middle of the desert. We should shoot a movie here. And then the Burj Khalifa, he said, oh my God, we have to do something with that. Specifically, this should be in a Mission Impossible movie. So it was like let's do this in a Mission Impossible movie. And then it was Applebaum and Nemec, who wrote the sequence, and then Bird, who kind of evolved the sequence. So a lot of people involved in the creation of these, not just these movies in general, but a specific sequence like that happens. And it's funny, by the way, Matt, because Abrams was specifically directing Super 8. And, we should mention he was offered this movie to come back and direct. He couldn't because he decided to do Super 8 instead, but he stayed on as producer. But because it's all Paramount, like it's like a show in the making of, like him on the set of Super 8. And they talk about how he would be getting dailies and be like in between shots of Super 8 being like, oh my God, watching Tom Cruise on the side of a building, seeing what they were doing.
Oh my God. And he's like,
yes. And Brad Bird says that like 3 days into shooting in Dubai, he woke up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night being like, holy shit, what if Tom Cruise dies? Like when I start my movie on the side of this.
I mean, I think we're all agreed Tom Cruise will die filming a movie. Like, at this point, that's how he's going to die. So, someone's got to do it.
They show, like, of course, wherever they go, they're going to get attention. And they show, like, when they were in Prague, which doubled for Russia, and he filmed the freaking crazy, again, we don't talk about it being crazy, but it's crazy for anyone to do, especially a movie star, the belt around the wire, which he really did. And they show all these locals are watching him, like standing on the ledge and then doing that. And they're just like, and he's like smiling at them before, and then he does it. And these like local like film students being like, that's amazing, that they interviewed. And they don't show this, but they talked about how it's like when they filmed Burj Khalifa, people in the Burj Khalifa were like leaning out to watch all this and being like, holy. And also they said, Burj Khalifa, of course, they had to get permission to shoot there. And the one thing that they really pushed them on was how many windows they would take out, because that was the big argument, was like okay, you can take out like 3 windows to shoot this, and they kept pushing and pushing and pushing because they needed to get more crew people out there and cameras out there, and they ended up pulling out almost 30 windows, and of course they were going to have to replace, but that was a big back and forth to actually do that in that insane situation.
Oh, wow.
So that's all Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which is still a very impressive movie that one day, when theaters are a thing again, I would love to see in IMAX again. I saw this movie like several times in IMAX. I paid a lot of money for the spectacle of it and saw it in IMAX, and every time they'd show the Dark Knight Rises preview, and I'd say, what the fuck is Bane saying? Because it was before they
Yep, this was the Bane trailer. I remember because I saw it in IMAX too in Burbank, yeah. All right.
That's it. Next week.
That's rotation. It. I still wonder what Bane's saying. Anyway.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Again, we've got 2 more Mission Impossible movies. Next time we will talk about Rogue Nation and The Syndicate and a new villain of the series. Maybe I think this guy is my favorite villain. I mean, I love Philip Seymour Hoffman, but just because he's sort of a continuing guy. So anyway, and his voice is he sounds a little Peter Lorre-ish. Like he's like, yes, he's got that slimy voice. Ugh, it's so disgusting. Ugh. Okay, thank you. Everything is possible. Everything is impossible too, and nothing is real. And Shakma. Full spoilers for Mission Impossible 5: Rogue Nation. Directed by, written by, and directed by Christopher McQuarrie. Based on a story by McQuarrie and Drew Pearce.
Drew Pearce, writer of Iron Man 3, Hobbs and Shaw, previously talked about on this, Hotel Artemis, bunch of stuff.
And, yeah, I'm going to say it right now, and, always free to... When we're talking about great movies, I'll change my mind in a few weeks, but this was my favorite of them. Again, not having, like, the skyscraper sequence that Ghost Protocol had, or the bridge action scene. I'm just thinking of big trailer moments or big poster moments.
Well, the trailer, I mean, it was sold on him on the side of the plane.
Yeah, but even that was the opening, and it's impressive because it was Cruise, and this was a big deal when they were making this movie, that Cruise, he's come to the point in this film franchise where he is doing so much, he's going so above and beyond what an action star is required to do to deliver excellent movies. Like, could they have done that with green screen and we would have been just as impressed? Who knows? I think the fact that before this movie came out and they had a whole bunch of behind the scenes shit about him doing this stunt where he dangled 5,000 feet from the ground off of this plane for real as it took off.
Yeah.
And then when we all went into this movie and saw it, we knew it was him. Right. Like, if we went into this movie cold, would we just assume that was special effects? What do you think?
We would, yeah. I think you'd have to, right? You'd just be like, because there'd be no reason to assume one of the biggest movie stars ever was actually hanging on to a plane that was taking off like that.
So that was part of this movie's hook, was knowing going into this movie that he was going to do that. And nicely, the movie gets that out of the way in the first part.
Yeah,
it doesn't make you wait for it. It just gives it to you. As an action sequence, though, he doesn't fight people on top of that plane. Mm-hmm. It's over rather quickly. He starts on the wing, he goes down, he dangles, and then he gets inside the plane. It's an impressive moment, but it's not an impressive sequence. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I mean, because it's so short. It's obviously it's incredible that it's him on the side of the plane. And again, they made sure we knew that going in. It has what I think it does. Even though it's short, it does include a fun Mission Impossible beat, as we've talked about more and more of them deciding that Ethan, as amazing as he is, will still have these sort of human little moments. And the funny thing where when he finally, when Benji opens the correct door because he accidentally opened the back door, Ethan almost flies out. When he's saved, he's almost not saved.
But that was a CGI moment when he flies into the plane.
But I'm just saying, it's just a clever,
I guess
you don't see in other action movies. And it's just a cool way to open the movie. It's probably one of their most, it's the most Bond opening of any of these movies.
Well, and this I feel, and that's what leads me into what I guess my whole point is. Because it takes me, as you all know, it takes me a while to get to my point, or to discover it for myself, which is that this is the most James Bondian Mission Impossible movie for me, as far as the action sequences go, because they're not crazy over the top spectacles. They're all just really well done traditional action, like a motorcycle chase, like action and fights going on behind the scenes of an opera. Like, these aren't like, I'm looking at the poster for this movie, and all you see is an explosion, the characters, and Ethan Hunt on a motorcycle. Right. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I guess that was my point of, like, you don't come out of this movie like with a huge image in your head of like what the big standout. It's not like the big standout moment, you know, like where the first movie had the Langley break in. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense at all? But the action is also well done and exciting, but it's all still very traditional. Also, this is probably if we're talking about Tom Cruise running, this is like a very medium running movie. He runs at the end, but he's not run. But even at the end, when they're running through the streets of London, it is not the intensity of where he ran in 3 and 4.
True.
Like they still knew that it's best to end the movie with Ethan Hunt running. Like they're still keeping that tradition alive, but he is not running with the possessed by the devil sprint that he has in those other movies.
I want to say we should, something we forgot to talk about last week that I want to mention going into this one, which is that the reminder that when Ghost Protocol happened, there was a lot of talk that it was a passing the baton movie and that Renner was going to take over. That Ghost Protocol was probably going to be the last one Cruise did.
Really?
This was talk, and Brad Bird was asked about this in his Light the Fuse podcast interview. And he said from his perspective as the filmmaker, he never had that in mind. And he's like, Tate, why can't Tom keep doing it? But he did kind of acknowledge that the studio might have been thinking about that. It was a funny era too, because Renner had just done the Bourne movie too. So there was this whole Jeremy Renner will take over your franchises. This one being very different though, because he was actually going to be doing a movie with Cruise. But then it just seemed like Ghost Protocol was so well received that talk went away. And then it becomes interesting because then it becomes Brandt is one of the team in this movie. But it's a little probably if Renner was supposed to take over, then it becomes a little strange that he's there. He's Jeremy Renner, who's become a big movie star at this point. He's an Avenger at this. By the point Rogue Nation comes out, he is now an established Avenger. But yeah, that was at one point the talk, and then that quickly went away, and obviously Cruise has continued to lead this franchise.
Okay, a few things about Rogue Nation. This is to date, the movie that has brought back the most people from a previous film. If we're talking about Luther, Benji, and Brandt all together coming back. We didn't get any Julia this time around. I mean, we got a nice tag of Julia at the end of the fourth movie, Ghost Protocol, but no mention or anything, or even an inkling for Mission Impossible franchise fans that we'd ever see Julia again. We'll talk about that next week, obviously, but I think, at this point, the Julia thing's been put to bed as far as everyone knew.
Yeah. I will also say, because, like you were saying last week, that because the end of the fourth one is this is the new team, but is it? But then everyone comes back who's sitting at that table except for Jane Carter. But in the original conception of this movie, McQuarrie did plan to bring back Paula Patton, and he planned to bring back Maggie Q. And neither of them were available ultimately.
So they weren't available. Okay, I'm just happy to know it didn't have anything to do with the antiquated notion that you get one female a movie.
No.
Okay, because
he wanted both of them to be in it together, in fact. Now, if that had happened, would Ilsa even be a character? I don't know, because this was so early on.
That's true. I mean, here's the thing. Ilsa Faust is a great character, and that's what I really want to talk about is the standout of this movie isn't a specific sequence. It's the character of Ilsa Faust and Rebecca Ferguson, who's so great that, maybe a lot of what she was doing was originally what Carter or Maggie Q's character was going to do. But, she's so good that she's basically the standout of this movie. And it's such a huge... Everyone was talking about her after this movie came out. And I, having someone who slept on Doctor Sleep, always wanting to see it, just actually watched it a few days ago for the first time.
Oh,
And she's excellent in that movie as well.
she is. I love that movie. I hope you enjoyed that movie.
I did enjoy it a lot.
Good.
So it's a. I also enjoyed it. The idea that it ended the way that King ended The Shining, that Kubrick didn't go with.
Mm-hmm.
So Flanagan strikes again.
That's right. Flanagan.
Okay. This movie also notable that unlike Mission Impossible 3 and Ghost Protocol, Ethan Hunt, he goes through a lot in this movie, but he doesn't get the shit kicked out of him he does like in the last two. Like, he is limping by the end because he falls out of a window, which to me, I feel like he's been through worse. He should be able to shake that off. But, he's not all battered and bruised and, like, totally fucked up the way he is.
But then they do a 6-month time jump, so he won't. And they talk on the comment. I listened to the commentary Cruise and McQuarrie did last night, and I think it was Cruise. I think Cruise suggested a lot. I mean, Cruise is a very active producer on these movies, and so it might have even been him. But when they talked about him being shot, they go, "But then what do we do if he's shot so early in the movie?" I know it was Cruise's idea to do the 6-month time jump so that Ethan could be shot, but then they wouldn't have to have a wounded gunshot Ethan for the rest of the movie.
And then also you need to figure out how to make this movie more distinguishable than the first movie. Because once again, we're talking about fugitive Ethan. Movie is Ethan Hunt being a fugitive, which he was briefly in 3 for like 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But then he was for most of the movie in 1. Like, he was framed and everyone was after him. This time around, they went...
And then again in 4.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, everyone... So, yeah, how do you distinguish this movie from both 1 and 4? Yeah, because Ethan's a fugitive and the IMF's dissolved and villainized. And you get all of that in this movie, but they had to take it in different directions. They had to make it a global hunt for Ethan that lasts months. They have to completely dissolve the IMF to the point where Benji now just works for the CIA at a desk job, and everyone's scattered to the wind.
It's funny because it's the second movie in a row where the IMF is shut down. It's just that in the fourth one, it's shut down with, like, they're all basically framed and wanted. Whereas in this one, it's like they're just shut down. Like, Ethan's being hunted. Everyone else is just being, like, given, like, scuttled off somewhere.
It does make me wonder. It does make me wonder if anyone learned the truth about what happened at the end of Ghost Protocol, because Alec Baldwin steps in here as a CIA director, and he's like, they invaded the Kremlin, and look what happened to the Kremlin. Well, it's like, didn't they say that? Like, did no one learn that was Hendrix doing that?
But it's also worth noting that it's just, like, way more continuity at this point. Like,
oh yeah, like they're bringing up the Langley break-in from the first movie for sure. Yeah,
they've made reference to that, but I'm just saying that even the fact that we're talking about the end of the fourth one and the missile clipping the building, and it just feels like way. And it's funny if you listen to McQuarrie talk, he constantly, especially because he's active on social, so I'm sure he's getting just inundated with, bring back this character, bring back this character, bring this character. And he'll often say how he likes everything's in play. Anyone could come back. He likes to have it all on the table, but at the same time, and I of course I agree with him where, like, it can't rule over everything. He also talks a lot about wanting these movies to still be enjoyable as standalone movies. But at the same time, I think he likes continuity more than he wants to admit.
Definitely.
Because the more we get into it with him, the more he's
Eric. He's bringing back Kitteridge.
I know.
He's one of us.
And by the way, this movie has multiple direct references to the first movie, Rogue Nation, including when Ethan goes to the phone booth and he calls Brandt when we found out he's been shot. He says the exact same, like, clearance that he did in the first movie when he called Kittredge. Like, they made sure to, like, have him repeat, like, the same, like, code and thing from the first movie. And there's a couple other direct references.
Man, no wonder Solomon Lane infiltrated them. They haven't changed the code in, like, 15 years.
Well, let's just say they cycled through a bunch, but they went back to that. It's like, their passwords.
I was going to say their password is password. But they changed it once, and it's now password 1.
right, with an exclamation point.
Yeah. They're like, oh, I guess I need capital letters and characters, so here we go.
And there's also I'll again maybe I'll do what I did last time and kind of throw in things as we're going along. This was also like he likes to do references to the TV show when he can, and the opening credits. By the way, yes, we've now the going through the movie his back is now established is going to be part of the series again. And the opening credits have like file folders like the TV show, but also another early idea for this movie that didn't end up happening, but would have been a deep cut idea, was that Ethan was going to have like a mentor figure in this movie. And that mentor figure was going to be a character named Dan Briggs. And Dan Briggs was the Christopher Pike of Mission Impossible. Dan Briggs was the leader of the team.
He was like the season 1 guy.
Season 1 before Jim Phelps. And so he was going to bring back Dan Briggs as a character that would be a mentor to Ethan in this movie. So just again, like a lot, this movie, those were all ideas early on that didn't happen. And then the movie itself got rewrote drastically as they were making it. But, yeah.
All right. As much praise and love as we gave to Philip Seymour Hoffman in 3, I love Sean Harris's Solomon Lane. He's my favorite villain of the series. So I'm not saying that the series has had a ton of like huge memorable villains. It's basically him and Owen Davian. So it comes down to me between Sean Harris and Philip Seymour Hoffman, but Sean Harris is better for me, I think, overall.
To me, it's Owen for me completely. Even though I like Sean Harris, there's just something I think that there's something I want the character to have one extra little bit that he doesn't have. I don't know.
He's just the creepiest. His voice, it just does it for me, and also like Davian, whereas I don't think Davian is as much as protective as I don't think Davian wants anonymity quite as much as Solomon Lane does, where his a big part of his persona is the fact that he can never be seen and he can never be revealed, and he used so many people by proxy, and he's often speaking to you through someone else through a contact lens, because the whole thing is like you can't prove he exists or that the syndicate exists. It's all just a fabrication. Like he was behind the Ridge Holland attack on Adam Cole.
right.
And yeah, like I mentioned last week, he's got a very Peter Lorre-esque voice, and I just dig him. I dig him a lot.
The one very strange thing about Sean Harris's casting is how much he resembles Simon Pegg.
That is curious.
To the point that they have a face-to-face moment after Benji is captured that seemed to be significant. Like I felt like, oh, this has to be significant that they cast someone with very similar facial structure to Simon Pegg, but it didn't. There wasn't. They just he had a similar facial structure to him.
They're just Brits.
Yes.
I just think that the moment when we're skipping way to the end here, when they capture Lane in the box and they all surround him, is one of the most satisfying beats of the series.
Oh, it's great.
And so like that, he's captured, he's on everyone, he's exposed, and it's so satisfying that, and I feel like it can only come from a very satisfying villain. Okay,
and we should also mention with continuity just that the Syndicate is mentioned at the very end of Ghost Protocol. I believe that was Brad Bird came up with that, because again, so many people were rewriting that movie, including Brad Bird. So McQuarrie originally did not intend to use the Syndicate. But again, like I said, I think he likes continuity more than he cares to admit. Then he decided, there's this thing mentioned at the end of the fourth one. Might as well.
But what he decided to do is to make them I'm assuming that the title Rogue Nation was called ahead of time, because, as you mentioned last week, Ghost Protocol was decided after the fact, after Tom Wilkinson's character had said it, and they're like, why don't we just call it Ghost Protocol? Here, I feel like Rogue Nation was chosen first because Tom Cruise gets to say it.
Here's the funny thing about that.
Okay.
They mentioned in the commentary. It's fascinating how these movies are made. And again, they are drastic. Especially when I say they, I should say from 4 on, especially, it seems. They are drastically being rewritten as they're making them. And what they even McQuarrie even says he learned at this point by the time they did again, because he'd worked on not only had he worked on Ghost Protocol specifically, but then he also worked with Cruise a bunch at this point. They're coming off Edge of Tomorrow at the time they make this, and Jack Reacher. It's that because they rewrite these movies so much, if they're going to have big exposition scenes, they do them in a small confined space that is easy to rebuild somewhere else if they need to reshoot. He's like, because if we do it outdoors in the middle of a big action sequence, then it's a big pain in the ass. So that's why scenes that got reshot a lot along the way were Ethan in the booth at the record store when Solomon Lane, like, first speaking to him, and the scene where Ethan and Benji kind of go to the safe house, and Ethan, I think, calling Brandt in the phone booth, all of which could be continually rebuilt easily to add additional dialogue. And they specifically call out the fact that it's the scene with him and Benji where they kind of learn what the Syndicate is much more. Mm-hmm. And it says, like, a rogue nation. Well, that was, like, well into production. They'd already shot that scene, but then they decided on the title of the movie. And then they decided I think there was other stuff they needed to. They didn't just reshoot more for that to get that in. But knowing they had to shoot more of that scene again, they're like, oh, we can get the title of the movie in this scene. And so then he gets to say Rogue Nation.
No, I was right then. They came up with it before he said it. That's my point.
Oh, yeah. I just meant they didn't have it going into the making.
Oh, okay. No, that's true. But yeah. Because the way he says it, the way I felt like, oh, he knows it's the title. Right. Tom Cruise knows it's the title of this movie when he says it. This movie also has a lot of Ethan and Benji.
Yes.
Like, just as a duo.
A very big, like, kind of buddy dynamic there between them.
Okay. So, very cool opening sequence. It leads, we do learn that whatever was going on there with the chemical warheads was Syndicate related, but goes right into the trial of the IMF. The IMF gets disbanded right at the same time that Ethan is taken and captured by the Syndicate. And it all sort of times up very poorly for Ethan Hunt, where he finally meets people from the Syndicate, gets key clues as to what they might be, which is that he recognizes the Bone Doctor, and he's like, hey, you died, and that gives him his first big step toward, like, hey, these are probably all agents that are presumed dead across the globe. We meet Isla Faust. First, we think she's a villainess, but then she helps him escape, so she's deep undercover. This movie has a lot more, like, the scene with Solomon Lane in the record shop is great. And then it goes right into there's a lot more fist fighting in this movie. Mm-hmm. This movie has, and that's why another James Bondian element. There's a lot more hand-to-hand combat, specifically bringing in Isla Faust. And I believe when Ilsa and Ethan are taking out the people in that room, I think they do Fire and Desire's finisher. Where, like, she holds someone and then he does, like, a running knee strike to the head. And I was like, oh, that was such a tag team move. And it's not the first time they would do a lot of these cool tag team moves together. But yeah, a lot of just, like, we get the dangling off the plane, and then the rest of this movie is a lot of close quarter stuff.
Mm-hmm. By the way, they once again, and I learned this yesterday watching the commentary because McQuarrie pointed it out, but they once again do the simple but fun trick of the villain is already in the scene before he makes himself known, and I never realized it, which is that when Ethan walks into the record store,
he's in the booth. Empty,
but he's in the booth in the background. Yeah,
he's already there. So,
which, by the way, was an idea. Cruise really liked the idea of, like, an analog, like getting the mission on the vinyl. And I don't think he knew, but then they acknowledge it was a fun coincidence that the very first episode of Mission Impossible, the mission is on a vinyl record. That's, like, from I think it might even be the first scene of the TV
so it's just
show.
Sort of like a happy accident.
A happy accident, yes.
I was reminded during the trial of the IMF between Alec Baldwin and Jeremy Renner in the beginning, it's like the IMF basically got Sokovia accorded.
Right.
Like, they needed oversight. Instead of oversight, though, they basically got dissolved. And there's a little bit of a meta element to what the chairman was saying. It was basically like, your methods are indistinguishable from luck. Which is a big part of this series, right? That's a fun part of the series, but it's undeniable. But they basically said it out loud.
And the other thing this movie is doing, and you're mentioning it in that kind of funny way, but also there's a really great moment when Ethan walks into the record store, and the young woman, who is played by a British actress with the greatest British actress name ever, Hermione Corfield, when she says to him, like, it's really you, and the stories aren't all true, are they? That it's like Ethan Hunt at this point, after all we've seen, is like known among the IMF as like the guy who's done the craziest shit. And well, he should be. But it's like this movie's kind of acknowledging his history.
He's also had to, because he's been the craziest. He's been framed the most.
Right.
I'm saying he's been done dirty a motherfucking lot of times, and that's why he has to do it.
But then he's also hung off a lot of things and done a lot of crazy shit. And so, yeah, this movie is kind of acknowledging that a little bit more directly.
Hermione Corfield, by the way.
Benji saying to him, like, you're going to take this too far at some point. Like, that, like, how insane and dangerous these things he's doing, which became almost like a meta thing, because this is the point where the audience is saying, Tom Cruise is going to kill himself doing one of these movies. So then you have Benji as audience surrogate going, Ethan, you're going to kill yourself doing this.
Yeah. I was just trying to say Hermione Corfield was in Last Jedi, too. So.
She was a pilot who got blown up.
Okay. I'm just saying she doesn't make it through she rarely makes it through the first few minutes of a movie.
A major franchise stuff.
Okay, so we meet Ilsa Faust. She's immediately captivating and cool and fun and mysterious, because she allows Ethan to escape. She's like, I have to go back. We don't know what's going on. Then we boom cut over to 6 months later, where, let's see, what are we doing? Oh, should mention before we jump to 6 months later, Ethan Hunt's insane escape from the pole, which is like the...
Yes.
Everyone flipped out about the salmon bar jumps in Arrow. Mm-hmm. But this one was, I don't even know if this is possible to do, but it's possible for Ethan Hunt to do, but his
yes. But it's awesome.
Insane core strength escape from the pole was crazy. Then we get the fake out where we get the Silence of the Lambs fake out where the CIA is about to track Ethan down in Havana, but he's actually in Paris. But in Havana, he has left them a smorgasbord of evidence and or conspiracy theories about the syndicate, who they are convinced don't. They not only are they convinced they don't exist, they think Ethan made up the syndicate, mm-hmm. which is weird. But yeah, they think he made it up just so he can run around and dangle off things. And
that's his kink.
Benji is playing Halo at his new job and being grilled every week about Ethan. But then we get we won't go through every beat, but we'll mash over to the Vienna Opera House in Austria, where Benji and Ethan are now kind of this duo. Benji gets a really fun scene where he's like, I'm not going... That's after everything happens, but you really need to... I think I like this movie more because Benji still gets to be funny, but he also... They give him a lot more dramatic things to do. Whether we're talking about the fact that he tells Ethan he's not going home, he's a field agent, he knows the risks, and if he dies, he dies, to the bomb vest at the end. Like, there are a lot of really more dramatic moments with Benji. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think the tone of this film was a little more... It was still fun and had jokey moments throughout, but it also was a little more grave and serious for me, and I think that's what I liked more than Ghost Protocol. And but the Opera House fight was really just well done, because you've got a fight sequence going on, you've got mysterious things happening with Ilsa Faust, and what is Solomon Lane doing there, and what is she doing there, and why are there other agents with guns on her and on the Chancellor of Austria, and all of that having to do... So Ethan's going into these situations not knowing what's happening. He just knows that this guy's supposed to be there, and he has to figure it out, and so that we can figure it out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's a great sequence, really well done. It's not the first time you've ever had a movie use the opera to back action, but it works really well here. They talk in the commentary how they didn't realize they were going to do. They thought there'd be more of original score, and then they just realized, this was really fun this way. Ethan making the decision to shoot the Chancellor when he only has one bullet and two people both pointing guns at the Chancellor is a great beat. Like, how do you solve this problem? Well, you shoot the guy they're both trying to shoot first, to take him out of the equation, but only obviously wound him, although it's all for naught because he's killed right after. Really, really good, cool stuff there. It's just a really well done sequence. And by the way, it's funny when you don't think about these things, but they mention how Ilsa's wearing this sort of striking yellow dress, and McQuarrie on the commentary is like, it becomes process of elimination because Maggie Q wore a red dress and Paula Patton wore like an aqua dress, and we just didn't want to repeat a color. So it's like, all right, Ilsa will wear a really cool yellow dress. And the big dude that Ethan fights, which is a really cool sequence, is the like the fighting trainer on the movie. That's his big role as giant thug that Ethan.
Giant former Mossad agent, I believe he is.
Yeah.
Then, it was all for naught because, as you said, the Chancellor gets blown up. We get a bit more uneasy alliance between Ilsa and Ethan, where she escapes, but she gives him a way for her to track it down. Ethan says the Rogue Nation line and also calls them specifically the anti-IMF.
Benji says that, and that's a funny thing because Benji called the Rabbit's Foot the anti-god, and now I'm a little sad that Benji hasn't said something as anti in his other two movies, because 2 of the 4 movies he's been in, he has noted something as the anti-something.
Yeah, but he says it every other movie, Eric. So there's still Mission Impossible 8. He'll say it.
All right. No. 7 he should say.
7.
Yeah, he should say 7. Something else. Just a very a little aside, because I like to point out when people from other movies we've talked about are in these. The closing credits to this movie surprised me because I saw the name America Olivio in it, and she is the actress who was in the Friday the 13th remake, very naked at the beginning, having sex with Ben Feldman in the tent, and then she gets roasted over the fire.
Okay, who's she in this?
And I was like, who is she in this? I couldn't figure it out. And then I figured it out is because her character name is the name of the opera. So I think she's in the opera, which makes sense because she is a singer. She's done Broadway. She actually did the Spider-Man musical and stuff. So
man, Spider-Man, turn off the dark. Ugh.
That's right, which I saw.
Okay. This is the only part of Solomon Lane I didn't like, is the scene where we finally meet him for real when Ilsa reports back to him. He does the thing where he shoots his own henchman very coldly, and no other henchman reacts. Yeah. Where it's like, this is part of the job. He might kill me on a whim. Now, you could make the very flimsy argument. It's like, I don't need somebody who fails me, and she actually took him down and disarmed him. And so he's being punished for that. But it seemed like a thing that, with what the Syndicate is, I don't know that there's any necessary ultimate abject loyalty to Solomon Lane other than the fact that he's paying you a lot of money.
Right.
These are people who are loyal to no one. Yeah, these are people who are very specifically loyal to no one because they've felt fucked by their own government in some manner, I assume. Mm-hmm. Or they're just lowlifes who won a lot of money anyway and were never fit to be the agents of a specific country in the first place. So it's not like this cult where they all have this undying love for Solomon Lane, but he's allowed to kill one of them and no one else is like, that sucked.
I'm out.
I didn't know the Syndicate was one of those outfits, where
in one of these movies, there should be a picket,
well, that's why I felt like, somebody, for the guy who conceived the story of this movie, I know he didn't write the script, but specifically in Iron Man 3, if we're talking Drew Pearce, there was literally the henchman who's like, can I just leave? Because these guys suck and I didn't like them anyway, and then he lets them go,
Yeah, I will. I'll use that opportunity to say that I think very little of Drew Pearce's movie is in this movie. I mean, he has a story by credit, but so much had changed while they're filming it, and also a fascinating thing I didn't know about till The Fuse had Seth Grahame-Smith, my college friend who you owe money to, Matt.
I owe him $8 for salt. For the movie, not the seasoning.
the seasoning. Seth Grahame-Smith, I didn't know this till he did the episode of Right the Fuse, was part of the Rogue Nation writers' room. And this is something that happens in Hollywood more and more with these big movies and franchises, which is McQuarrie was already set to direct, but he had like a think tank, and it was Seth and I think Drew Goddard and Christopher Yost and a couple other notable people just for a few days kind of brainstorming ideas, concepts, like, set pieces. Even though Seth Grahame-Smith is, Seth on the podcast very much is like, ultimately, I don't think they use almost anything we did because McQuarrie's great and he just came up with cool shit on his own. I think very little of Drew Pearce's original. Maybe just if he gets a story by credit, there must be a little bit in there, but not the direct stuff that's in there, I think.
Okay. Then we go to Morocco.
Also, by the way, at this point, like you mentioned, Benji has a great moment where when he's like, I am staying, and it's very funny and great when Ethan's like, okay. But also, I think, Benji has the most prominent role of the team in this movie, but I think McQuarrie, continues to do a very good job here of just making sure that, the team, they feel like as fleshed out as they can be, even though it's Ethan's movie, of course. But it's a nice beat where Luther and Brandt are working together, but Luther's like, I don't know you. And says we saw them meet at the end of Ghost Protocol, but basically this establishes they haven't been doing a bunch of missions together. These two guys, and Luther
also answers the question what we asked last time, which is how do you have two computer guys on the team? And yes. they were in a mission together in the first opening moments, but then what do? You split them up and make Benji more of a field guy, kind of. Mm-hmm. Than a computer guy, and I think this movie sort of established Benji as more of a boots on the ground type character by giving him more dramatic moments too. And Luther's mistrust of Brandt sets us up for the final act where we're expected to believe for a few minutes that Brandt turned on Ethan, so it works out. Then we get into the Morocco scene where they have to steal a file from a thing. They joke. There's another fun joking moment about Benji possibly wearing a mask, so much so that they actually filmed an alternate sequence where it's like, this is if you got to wear a mask, this is what would happen, but this is why you can't wear a mask.
Yes. This is a very fun sequence because they do... Ethan also gets even though Ethan is actually going to do this, he gets here's how this is going to go with no hiccups. Right. Because they talked about when they filmed that in the water tank, they had to make sure to also film Ethan just doing it effortlessly for this sequence. It's very fun. They also do a very old school but really cool camera trick, which is when they show Benji being a mask being put on Benji by Ethan. They are doing the doubling everyone in one shot. So it's like the actor playing the guy he's doubling and Simon Pegg are just facing each other in opposite chairs. Someone's doubling Cruz facing Cruz. They've put the books, because it's supposed to be a mirror, with the backwards of the titles inside the mirror. Yeah. So it's all just like an in-camera, old-school little fun trick there. Also, there was a very brief moment when Benji walks into, the setup room where he sees the mask device and he's like, ooh, right. he really wants to wear a mask so much that when he sees the mask maker, he gets really excited. And every movie they've made sure the mask maker looks cooler because it's several years later every time and they want to update the technology.
Okay. This is the big Tom Cruise holds his breath, not the hanging off a plane sequence, but reportedly, even though there's a lot of computer effects going on, I don't know. Apparently, there's a 3-minute shot where Cruise holds his breath for 3 minutes, and he actually trained with somebody specifically, a breath expert. I don't know what you'd call him, but to be able to hold his breath for a long take. And the stunt coordinator actually claims he held his breath for 6 minutes. But he trained with a diving specialist and with an amazing name, as amazing as Hermione Corfield. No, but. Kirk Crack trained him to hold his breath for 3 minutes in an underwater sequence.
Absolutely terrific sequence. On the commentary they talk about it. Again, I do like this. I love commentaries, guys. Learning all the minutia, like the fact that they originally did have score underneath it. They realized it played better without. It also kind of throw back to the Langley sequence, and there's been some other sequences in these movies where it's take out the score, it makes them more tense. Also, what you're mentioning, it's like they were gonna do it as like McQuarrie's like we were gonna do this as a oneer, and just not cut away. But he actually realized then it hurt Benji because you lost the tension of Benji at the same time. The whole idea is that Ethan has to complete this or Benji's screwed. So by not cutting away, they realized it's like, oh, we're losing any tension with Benji. We can't just cut back to Benji several minutes later trying to get in, or there's no tension with what he's doing at the same time. But a great sequence. Again, they add it's like all the little touches, the fact that thing, the machinery spinning around keeps coming around at him. And when he drops both cards and the fact that the dumb luck part, he has to make it just a guess on which of the cards is the right one at that point. While he's done, this is the second movie where Ethan dies.
and Ilsa brings him back to life.
Yeah.
And this is another thing I kind of wanted to mention where it's like, Julia got a really cool action moment at the end of Mission Impossible 3 where she basically shoots down some people, including one of the major villains in the movie.
Yeah.
And isn't helpless and is made to be the one who actually is protecting Ethan before she brings him back to life. But also, it's kind of this movie. Rebecca Ferguson and Michelle Monaghan, they don't look the same, but they're also not dissimilar. There's definitely a fabric that they both contain cloths from. They're Rebecca Ferguson is very much a Julia type, and it almost feels like, hey, what if Julia was actually a capable super agent?
Right.
And that's maybe where the idea of Isla Faust came from. And so, yeah, this is a nod to 3, but also the fact that he's brought back to life by a kind of a Julia type character in the sense of, if not just in certain physical aspects.
Mm-hmm. By the way, with Ferguson, it was interesting to hear McQuarrie talk about the fact that because this movie made Ferguson a star. She'd obviously been in other things, but most people will first have seen her as far as like mainstream movie audiences in this movie, and it's a hell of a big like major role to get on this. But McQuarrie talked about there was a much bigger star that was in talks for this movie for months. He didn't want to name who it was, but he felt very frustrated when it ended up not happening because he said he realized that it was her representation was basically leveraging Mission Impossible to get her more money for another movie they really wanted her to do. But of course, at the end of the day, he's so happy because he's like, I can't imagine him with anyone but Rebecca Ferguson. You can tell he loves this character and he loves Rebecca Ferguson in the role. He talks about how great she is constantly on the commentary. So, of course, I am curious, who was the major movie star who, for months and months, circled doing this movie?
Oh, man, I thought you were... I thought you were going to tell us.
Like, no,
I thought the whole story was you were leading up to like who it was.
Oh no, because McQuarrie hasn't. One day he'll probably tell it because again, McQuarrie likes to do like 3-hour interviews. So
was it Angelina Jolie, and then where she and her father could have been in this franchise, but then she wound up doing Salt, and that's why I owe Seth Grahame-Smith $8.
It all ties together. That's why you owe Seth Grahame-Smith $8.
Okay. Then it goes right from this sequence, though, into a huge chase sequence that involves cars and motorcycles, and it's really fucking cool. Streets of Morocco.
So cool.
And it brings in Luther and Brandt at the same time. Motorcycles, cars, that big backwards jump. That's not just like a big crash, but the car does multiple flips.
It's such a rad sequence. It's funny because there was a motorcycle chase in 2, but it was so kind of over the top and silly. This one is so intense, and then first it's got the cars, and first it's got like the part where Ethan like turns the car in this tight street, and the motorcycles crash against it. It's funny they talk in the commentary about the fact that Simon Pegg, we take it for granted that Cruise will risk his life doing these movies. So it is very funny to hear Cruise on the commentary say how. Because McQuarrie's like, Simon Pegg was really in the car the whole time with Tom, and then Tom Cruise is like, yeah, he was so brave to do that. It's like Tom Cruise takes for granted, I will risk my life, and I will actually race this car down these tight streets of Morocco. But hey, wow, Simon Pegg was brave to sit next to me while I did that for several days.
Just a really fun mid-movie pile-on of awesome action.
Yeah, and it's again, this is a second movie in a row that does like the crazy sequence into crazy sequence, because in 4 they did,
into a chase sequence specifically.
Into a chase sequence, yeah.
Like
but this chase sequence is even
a
better.
heist into a chase. Yeah, 2 movies in a row, but it's still really effective. It works super well.
It's funny too, because talking about the Jeremy Renner thing again, about how and by the way, they give him a lot of credit on the commentary for he was improvising constantly on like a lot of funny Brandt lines, including when he's complaining to Luther about what car he picked was Renner. But it's funny because I do wonder, again, speculation, who knows, would Renner feel frustrated given how Ford presented him? And like, of course, the whole idea in 4 is that you don't know he's a badass till it turns out he is. He gets his own big sequence when he has to go into like the big spinning fan thing. And in this movie, he gets none of that. I was like, the only action sequence he's kind of involved in peripherally is this one. He does save Ethan's life when the car's overturned and he's gonna be shot, and they like suddenly drive up and hit him. But it is funny that Brandt, he's one of the team, and I think Renner is very likable in this role. But given the fact that he was probably kind of sold on it initially, is like, and you're going to kind of take over, maybe.
Yeah. This is also the part of the movie where they do a mock-up of what happened in Ghost Protocol, and they flip it. Whereas right after this, the team implodes. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Not soon after this, when they learn what the file is and that can only be opened by the Prime Minister, they have this mock argument, which is probably real, but then there's off-screen they come up with a plan that we don't get to see, because in the last movie they actually did sort of implode a bit for real, and this time what they come to is that Brand is going to fake turning on Ethan, and we just don't get to see the part where they plan that out, where in a certain way it acts for like a few minutes of this movie it becomes Ocean's 12 a little bit, where it's like the whole thing was a ruse and just to fake us out, but also fake out basically Hunley at that point.
Mm-hmm. Also, we should mention again the humor, and also the like not make letting your great action hero also sometimes be fallible is the great funny thing with the fact that Ethan has just been brought back from the dead from drowning, and he's off his game. Which means he can still do an amazing car chase, but when he falls down, which was a cruise improv, when he
tries to slide over the thing,
he slides over the car, which Ethan does a lot, but he just falls. And then like another thing they kind of came up with on the day, which was the way that they were gonna run into literally Brandt and Luther, and Ethan kind of be like confused in the moment. A funny thing is that McQuarrie's brother is a real life, I believe, Navy SEAL who actually drowned and had to become brought back, and told him that one thing that happens is you lose your short-term memory for a little bit. So some of that came from that. Was like that Ethan being a little hazy in that whole part.
I also wanted to mention that the fact that in the end, Solomon Lane is after a hidden account that has 2.4 billion pounds in it, which is way more than dollars. I can't remember the exchange rate, but
yeah,
it's like, probably $3 billion. And all I do is think back to Mission Impossible 2, where drippy, stupid Sean Ambrose wants to sell a mega virus for $37 million. And I was like, it's so stupid. I get that it's still a long time ago, but still.
But still. No, I mean, but it was in the era where they were already, Dr. Evil already existed to make fun of the like undervaluing idea. Also, though, again, because at this point in the series, it's become this thing where they know the giant set pieces, but they don't know almost any specifics. So they joke a lot on the commentary about they didn't know what was on the drive. Like, they're just filming scenes in the movie where it's like Solomon wants this drive, we can't open the drive. But they're like, but what's on the drive?
But then once they figured it out, it gave the movie such a fun, cool moment, super spy moment of like, Ethan, I memorized every single bank account. Like,
yeah, oh yeah, no, it's great. That's the impressive thing is, and I think that's why it's like you have to have someone like McQuarrie who can do this, because yes, there are movies that have been made up as they're filming them that become disasters, but if you have someone who's like guiding it and cruise along the way with him, who knows the character really well, knows the series, it's like, yeah, they're able to do this. They go into the movie kind of knowing this is how they're going to do it, and it works out. We don't
have to spend too long on the rest of this movie, because the third act is it's a lot of fun. It is definitely not the action that the rest of the movie has. But I want to point out that before we go into the point where like Ethan actually does wear a mask. He's impersonating the head of the British Secret Service, whatever that guy's name is. But this is the moment where Ilsa, when she returns to Atlee, as you said, and finds out that he's full of shit and he's a creep, and she's now sort of having these huge reservations against her own job in government, that she's getting more fleshed out as a character than we would. This is what we wanted from like Maggie Q and Paula Patton. Mm-hmm. A little more depth to the female role, and we get that here to the point where I know we got it with Maggie Q because she got a scene with Jonathan Rhys Meyers, a very brief car moment that was played kind of just to break convention.
Mm-hmm.
But
we didn't follow Ethan inside the building.
Right. But as far as like moments from like, you're looking at moments where a character who is on the screen that isn't a major character from the series, where it's not Benji or Luther and Brant talking to each other separately, but like Ilsa gets her own scene. Like she got one earlier with Solomon Lane just on her own, and now she gets another one going to her handler. And so this is sort of a standout for somebody coming in and getting their own moments that really help build the character, and also sets her up for what she does at the end of the movie, or what she wants to do with Tom Cruise right before the big moments at the end, which is like, run off with me. Like, let's just go. Like, our governments suck. And it gives you also a little more insight as to why something like the Syndicate could happen. Mm-hmm. Right? The Syndicate can happen because of the way the government treats its agents.
And this is where, again, kudos to McQuarrie for being someone who's very good at the follow-through, because Atlee was a very late addition to the script, and so was the Prime Minister, who, is a big part of the finale. But Atlee, they said that Atlee and that big scene with them on the park bench all came to exist because the motorcycle chase was originally Ethan chasing like one Owen's guys. Then they decided it's more interesting if Ethan's chasing Ilsa. But then they had a problem, they said, because they go, if Ethan's chasing Ilsa, Ilsa is now running from both Ethan and Owen. Owen.
I know who you meant, but yeah, you're saying your favorite villain, not my favorite villain.
not Solomon Lane. So if Ilsa's running from Solomon Lane and Ethan, who's she running to? And that's how Atlee got invented. And then it becomes this great scene with her that also, really contextualizes her character. So I really like hearing McQuarrie talk about these movies and the craziness of how they put them together, because they really approach them in this kind of jigsaw period, and they realize if we're going to add this new thing, then we have to see how that affects everything else, right, and kind of follow it through as we continue. And they talk about the fact that it's an interesting structured movie because they realized, wow, we go into a lot of dialogue after the chase sequence. We have these two huge sequences back to back. Then there's a lot of dialogue. And they worried about that, and they talked about how when they test screened the movie initially, there were complaints, this movie feels like it's dragging on too much, or it should have ended already. And then they realized they basically fixed it almost entirely with score. They said that they just needed the music to better unify and to not feel like that we were coming to a conclusion. And they said they did very little re-editing, and it worked. When they screened it again, suddenly people didn't have that complaint. So and also they realized consciously that this movie ends with the most scaled down action sequence, which is just a running gun chase. By Mission Impossible standards, a very simple sequence, but that they realized it's fine. Like they were trying to come up with something bigger, and they realized it didn't need to be bigger.
And I agree with that. I just wish that his running matched the intensity of the running in the other ones. Right. He didn't run as hard, but maybe it was the shoes he was wearing. But yeah, again, I don't think it needed anything else, because like I said earlier, the Solomon getting trapped in a box and being surrounded by the entire team was such a fun and fantastic moment, that and the idea that you also just come from the standoff with Benji and the bomb vest. And before that, the moment in with the Prime Minister and Atlee, and the reveal that Brant was in on it, like compounded, all of that just makes for a really exciting finale in its own way. Yeah,
no, it's great. We should mention that the hysterical, very funny, pointed speech they give Hunley. Sir, Hunt is the living manifestation of destiny and has made you his mission. And then Alec Baldwin, Hunt, when the mask reveal, which is all great, super fun. And also, by the way, they waited so long, and I think it worked. the fact that for basically the entirety of 2 movies until the very end of Rogue Nation, none of the heroes have actually worn a mask. And it kind of fallen by the wayside. They address they exist, but they don't wear them. The bad guy wore one in the 4th one, but we don't really even know why. But then, so then it works really well when Ethan pulls that mask off, and it's like, oh, yeah, they brought the mask back in a big
I do think, after the way the masks were used in 3 in such big ways, that they were like, we got to step back from this a little bit, because it was they used it so much in this movie for like big, like from Ethan doubling Owen to Owen's interpreter being trapped as Julia. Like, what else can we do with that that hasn't been done already or done to a much better narrative effect? Stepping back from it was really fun.
You mentioned how great. I want to reiterate. Simon Pegg is great in the scene at the.
I think that's why. And I was just thinking about that immediately after we were talking about the finale here. That's why the finale didn't need more. I think because when you take a character that's mostly been played for comedy and give him such a scary moment where he gets to drop everything, that all of his wiseacre attitude and his one-liners and just and do something completely dramatic and vulnerable like that. That's the finale, and the reveal that Ethan's memorized everything. Like, that was such a great moment that you don't need a sandstorm or a building dangle. You don't need that for the final moments.
Mm-hmm. And then, but there's still cool little beats. Ilsa gets a cool final knife fight with the Bone Doctor. That actor, by the way, was supposed to die in his first scene when Ilsa frees Ethan, but they liked him a lot, and so he got to be the henchman the whole movie, and die in a cool knife fight. And then there's a great beat where Ethan and a bad guy fly into the window of a building and then fly out of it, a little like a small-scale version of what happened in 3, and they tell a funny behind-the-scenes story of that, which is simply, again, Cruise being so involved in this movie as a producer that he was walking around with McQuarrie and other people location scouting, and they liked, and Cruise was like, hey, what if me and someone go through this window? And that the people in the office were like, oh my God, Tom Cruise is standing right outside a window gesticulating into the office. And then he was like, hey, can I come in? And they're like, yeah. And then he's like, can I go through this window? And then because of course they had to get permission, and that's how it happened.
All right. Rogue Nation, everybody.
And then
talk about whatever you want to do to wrap up. Still, even after this conversation, my favorite of the series so far.
Absolutely terrific movie. I think, even though Ghost Protocols, I think, is still my favorite. The series is running and up and running, and just great stuff. I think I've mostly said all the behind the scenes stuff at this point with this one.
Well, now we just kind of say this. You say it as we go along, so it's not so much for the end, but yeah.
Yeah, because there's if I'm blanking on something, maybe I'll mention it next week, because these movies, especially the McQuarrie ones, because he's done not just with Light the Fuse, but he also does these. He's done commentaries. And he's done these giant interviews with Empire Magazine. He's done for Fallout. He did like a 3-part, multiple 4 to 5 hours talking about it. And I listen to all of it because I love it, and I love him telling his stories about making them, and he just dissects it all in such an interesting way. Great movie. That's what I'll say. Ilsa's interesting at the end because. This movie, even as we're getting more continuity and much more connective tissue, it's funny that we've had characters not come back in the next movie, like Julia until the very end of Ghost Protocol, but even like Maggie Q and whatnot, because Ilsa, the way the movie ends, and they talk about this in the commentary a lot, is that Cruise was really big on having a romantic, the beats of a romantic vibe to a lot of their interaction, but then they say, I think McQuarrie says, romantic without being romance. And so they never kiss. There's chemistry between them, and there's a vibe between them, but it never becomes a romantic thing, which I like. But it's funny because Ilsa is the character that could easily have not come back the most,
Right. She was given sort of an end. Yeah.
She gets a story, but it's funny because, and then I guess I think it was a Cruise suggestion, but her, you know how to find me, or you know how to contact me at the end. So that there's just a hint that maybe she could be back again. But yeah, I just thought it was funny that at this point, as they're leaning more and more into continuity, they have this character that could have been a one-off character, but I think everyone, especially McQuarrie himself, who again, this is kind of his baby. It's like he came into this series a little bit with 4. This is the one he's totally guiding, but Ilsa Faust is his creation in a much bigger way, and I think he digs Rebecca Ferguson, and I don't think we're giving anything away to say she comes back in the next one, because not only has the movie been out, but she was promoted as beforehand. So we'll talk about that next week.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another Mission Impossible. Everything is impossible, but nothing is real. And Shakma. So, before we get into talking about Fallout, at this point, 6 movies in, Fallout being the highest grossing of the entire series and of Tom Cruise's career.
Yep.
After decades of being a box office hit, this movie, the biggest movie of Tom Cruise's career. We're starting also, especially with like Rogue Nation and then this movie, of being like, this is the American, even though James Bond is an American film franchise. It is. Like, we love James Bond. We love James Bond. We love James Bond over here, but it's not like, he's not an American agent,
right.
And he wasn't, the books weren't written by an American guy that the movies are based off of. That this is like, is this the American James Bond? And it is and it isn't, because there's enough differences that it isn't, especially because there's way more of a team element. It's based on a TV show that is a team. Mm-hmm. But also because, especially with the beginning of Bad Robot and J.J. Abrams' Mission Impossible 3, it's become a super serialized franchise. In a way that, James Bond-wise, only the Daniel Craig ones have been.
Right.
So it is interesting to me where when they talk about recasting Bond after Craig's final movie here, if we ever get to see it, what do you do now that his movies took James Bond from a fledgling agent, a fledgling 00 agent at least, through Spectre, through Blofeld, through and beyond, even doing the Mission Impossible things where like he's like been disavowed but he's left his position and been disavowed by them several times over the course of his films.
And he's been domesticated.
Yeah, exactly. He's fallen in love, like all these things. So like the next James Bond, like there's a huge question, where do you go? Is it a reboot time again? Do they Spider-Man it up again? Do you take him back to like his roots again? Or do you keep going with Ralph Fiennes and doing like as M and continue it on the way that kind of the Connery passed the torch to Roger Bourne, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So again, if we're talking about ever, we've got 2 more Mission Impossible movies on the horizon. Mm-hmm. But if anyone is ever talking about Mission Impossible again, it's going to have to be a reboot. I don't know. You can't continue with Ethan Hunt as with the age that Tom Cruise is now and where he's going to leave off on the series as a character. You can't keep doing it, I don't think. I think it has to be a reboot series. Especially because, and again, James Bond comparisons, they never killed off his wife like James Bond did, but, Mission Impossible 3 was kind of like the Honor Majesty Secret Service of the franchise. Mm-hmm. Like they did a little earlier. But yeah, it's just interesting to compare the 2 things. Obviously, also you can compare Mission Impossible with A-Team, with Fast and Furious, because it is kind of like combination of action and heists and cons and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's also interesting because I was thinking about the Bond thing a lot last night watching it too, because it's also just the fact that it's been going so long that this movie franchise is now 24 years old. And so it's funny because I was listening to the commentary. I only got to listen to like half of it last night, but they talked about, and I knew a little bit about this going in, but they were kind of, it was because it's McQuarrie and Cruise together. They talked about how the opening scene, which is the dream sequence, his nightmare about him and Julia getting married, and then like the nuke going off, and that and Solomon Lane is performing the ceremony, but how basically this movie, that whole thing, including opening like that, exists because Tom Cruise said he kept being asked about Julia. Like, people needed closure, and especially, McQuarrie's talked about this too, especially when Ilsa was brought in, who was a very popular character, but clearly also positioned to be Ethan love interest.
Right.
People needed Julia to be wrapped up more if we're going to invest in Ethan in a new like love story. And so that's why it exists. But at the same time, and this is where you're serving two masters, McQuarrie's like, okay, if we're going to do that, we need to reintroduce Julia, which me instinctively, Mr. Continuity and ongoing series, like, why do you need to reintroduce Julia? But then I thought about it from the Bond perspective and how few people's first Bond is the Dr. No. You know, it's like, and yes, Bond is different. It was never as serialized, and they just put out so many more movies. But at the same time, a lot of people
and they had different actors playing Felix Leiter, different actors playing Blofeld. They had there was rarely consistency until you got to late. You know, M was the same for a few long stretches, and Moneypenny was as well. But there was still a lot of like inconsistency and fluidity to that series. Yeah.
But at the same time, I do understand what they mean by the fact that movie is opening 12 years after Mission Impossible 3. And you cannot assume everyone will have seen or even remember that movie who are just casual people going to see an action movie and might not have seen all the Mission Impossibles or remember them. Because I thought, as a big fan of the series, wouldn't it have been cool if I didn't know she was in this movie and the first time she's introduced in the movie is when he shows the photo on the elevator?
No, that would have been great. No, yeah.
It would have been amazing, but not for enough people. And so I get why they were like, no, we kind of have to make sure that we understand that this woman is important to Ethan, even if you don't know the series, you know?
And, you know, speaking to how well this movie was received, and a lot of it has to do with just like the stunt work, and it's just a huge spectacle that's great in its own right. But also I do think that like that the consistency and the continuity made Mission Impossible fans, it satisfied Mission Impossible fans enough to also keep going back and seeing it. Like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about wrestling, like I'm going to laud the final 40 minutes of this movie a lot. So much so like where I'm putting my rankings of Mission Impossible movies, it's like, I feel like if this movie was a little bit better with some of the John Lark stuff, that I would rank it probably number 1. But right now, I rank it like it's a close call. But for me, like the final 40 minutes of this movie is better than most anything the rest of the series has done. And that's saying a lot. It's just so well crafted as not just like as a Julia send-off, but just as like a thrilling danger component action stuff with the helicopters and all that. Like we'll get to it. But so while I feel like the first part of the movie, the first 2/3 are very good, and have some great things, the last 40 minutes really like tip this movie into what it is for me.
Mm-hmm. I love the whole movie. It's funny because I was going into this, watching it again, I thought about the fact that I do instinctively feel I love Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation a little more than Fallout. But then watching Fallout again, I'm like, but it's freaking great. Like, you know,
well, one of the things Fallout does, and I think you brought this up, and I don't know where it came from because you must have heard it in an interview or something, but you've mentioned a few times that you said something like Christopher McQuarrie, for somebody who doesn't seem to care a lot about consistency, he cares a lot about consistency. And
he says he doesn't care.
Okay, so he said it because this movie is nothing but callbacks, Eric. Nothing but callbacks. First of all, returning villain. Second of all, a really intact returning team as far as at least just like the guys we didn't know how they would actually operate together, being the guys in the van, which are Benji and Luther. Coming back, callbacks to Benji loving masks, callbacks to rock climbing, callbacks to Ghost Protocol, where Ethan takes a big chance on hoping somebody hasn't met somebody before. Yeah. You know, just all these little moments that are huge callbacks to other things that have happened. Even Hunley, or when they're saying like, why would Hunt turn evil? Again, probably one of the weaker aspects of the film is the attempt to frame Hunt just because of all he's been through. But they do mention like, well, how many times has Hunt's government betrayed him? Like, how many times has he been disavowed by his own country? Like, why wouldn't he turn on them? So that even that they bring up how many times over the franchise this has happened. And so, yeah, he snapped. That's why. And, you know, call back to the end of Mission Impossible 3 when Benji is directing where Tom Cruise is running.
Right.
Even the motorcycle chase. This time it's in Paris, but like we just had it in Rogue Nation. There's so much stuff, and I'm not saying none of this is bad stuff. This is all amazing stuff.
There's a direct dialogue reference in the opening pre-title because he does the "Did we get it? We got it," which is it doesn't cut
That's
right to
from the first
title.
movie, right?
Yeah, but it is the first movie. Yeah.
All right, I know we're hopping all over the place. We might with this movie, like just going beat by beat. I think we might do that because some of the, like I mentioned, and this is just me speaking, some of the Henry Cavill Walker character being John Lark and like framing, like some of that gets a little murky. That's the part of this movie that I felt like they were most trying to figure out in the script writing process as they went along.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the set pieces and the stunt work are spectacular. We could talk about the opening, not just the fact that it opens with Julia, which is a huge moment, but the fact that, and we brought this up when we talked about the Friday the 13th reboot,
Yes.
which is that the long cold opening before the opening credits, which involves a full Wolf Blitzer cameo
Yes.
and a fake out of 3 nuclear devices going off.
It's very funny on the commentary because they're talking about how they acknowledge how long it is. It was like 16 minutes and something. It was cut down. It was actually a few minutes earlier originally, and that it was one of those things where they didn't know it was going to be as long as it was. Then it was like, oh man, there's a lot we're covering here. But also it's funny because they said, as it became that long, they were like, look, McQuarrie said he started to look up what other movies had such long pre-title stuff, and they were like, they came out, and he's like, The Departed, and I'm like, Friday the 13th, 2009, Christopher, you're not thinking of the big one.
Yeah, the most important one. Yeah, the one where Jason owns a full marijuana farm. Okay, so yeah, the movie's really good because they even bring up the smallpox outbreak in Kashmir. Like at the beginning of the movie, it comes back later. Lots of cool things. And it is funny because over the series that they really have to go into the performance mode. Luther and Ethan, where Ethan wants to like rip this guy's head off, wherever this nuclear scientist is in the bed. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting to note that we're still dealing with basically spins on the villain from Ghost Protocol, who was one of the least fleshed out villains as far as the series goes. But like we're still dealing with people who want to blow up the world because only that's the only way something new can come out of it. So with John Lark's character, with Walker's character, he's sort of the same way. And we're still dealing with these nuclear extremists are.
Also, it's interesting to note in the opening, we get there's a lot of big stuff for Luther in this movie. I mean, the whole opening hinges on the fact that Ethan won't let him die and lets the plutonium get taken as a result. And then Luther and Ethan go together to do the interrogation, which is the fake out. And it is funny again because McQuarrie, and I referenced this last week, but I'll be more specific this week, that there is a 3-part podcast interview McQuarrie did with Empire Magazine's podcast after Fallout came out, which is amazing if you're up for listening for like 5 to 6 hours of Chris McQuarrie talking about Mission Impossible Fallout, which I was up for. When he goes into everything and he goes into every decision and all these meetings they have, but he said he knew going into this movie, I'm going to give Luther a lot of stuff in this movie, knowing the last movie was a lot of Ethan and Benji stuff. And he said, and again, because he's pretty candid. And so Simon Pegg, who he loves and he loves working with, but he also has to deal with fragile egos. He said Simon Pegg was saying to him, I don't really have anything like dramatically interesting in this movie, and having to say to him, I'm sorry, it's Ving's turn. Last movie was you, so there's only so much time we have, so Ving gets more of the
dramatic stuff, I guess, the fight with Solomon at the end and getting hanged.
Yeah, he's still there significant. It's just he doesn't really basically he said he doesn't really have his character doesn't really grow in this movie. I mean, he gets to wear
I know, but he got to wear 2 masks, so he's fine.
So he's happy.
But Luther gets that. He gets the guilt of feeling like
He's a very good scene with Ilsa where he's like almost crying about what a good man Ethan is.
But then he also gets the scene with Julia with the bomb and stuff. So he got more to do after all this time since the first fucking movie.
That's exactly what McQuarrie said. He said he's been in 5 of these things. I need to give him more to do.
All right, but the opening is just a fun way of showing that there's not any huge action scene in this opening. There's a shootout, but there's no big stunt.
Right.
But that type of mask con can be just as rewarding as, I guess, a Halo jump, which is the next big thing that happens in the movie. But Yeah, like that's a hugely satisfying moment. That's a really fun way to open the movie, and it didn't need a car chase or this or that. It was just really fun, well executed con job slash heist slash trick, bamboozle, prank, whatever you want to call it. A jackass, I don't know what you would call it.
A punk.
A punk, yeah, I don't know. A ridiculousness. So then we've got Hunley is now on IMF's side. He moved to IMF from the CIA
last week. That he becomes the leader at the end of Rogue Nation.
And then now we've got Angela Bassett in sort of a kind of a thankless role, but she's now sort of the CIA head who's mostly an antagonist in the movie until the end when she comes around. So she's the cop who has to have her mind changed a little bit.
She's the new Hunley.
Yeah, new Hunley. And then do we know what the future is going forward with Alec Baldwin? Did he die in this movie?
Yeah, he died.
He died. Okay, I wasn't sure. We just saw him go, but I don't know if he got rescued and healed.
Oh no, he's supposed to be dead. They talk on the commentary again because again they are making these movies as they're rewriting them as they go. That like they talked about when they were filming the scene on the tarmac with Ethan and him at the beginning, they were still debating if he was going to die or not.
Right.
But they decided he would. Yeah.
I guess they'll get a new boss.
Right.
Well, Kitteridge is coming back, so we'll see.
Oh, and I guess I should mention that McQuarrie strongly considered it being Kittredge's voice giving him the mission at the beginning.
Yeah, it was another like Rogue Nation was another like nondescript voice, like whatever the intern is, whose job it is to record these things.
But
at IMF,
he does refer to him as Ethan, and so he strongly considered it being Kittredge. And I think what he said, and I understand what it was. It's almost if you did recognize his voice, then it becomes a distraction because he doesn't show up later in the movie or anything.
Right.
But obviously, it just shows you that he already had in his mind Kittredge being a presence again. It didn't happen in that one, but it's happening in the future.
All right, then we get to Henry Cavill joins as Walker, who's sort of a blunt instrument CIA assassin, has to tag along. They're after John Lark at a party in France, and then the White Widow is there. But this is when we get the leaps and bounds. We went from Tom Cruise hanging from a plane, which is pretty impressive, obviously, to a full halo jump by Tom Cruise.
Yes.
Wow. Like, it's not over Paris, obviously. That part's CG. But
it was over Abu Dhabi, yeah.
Yeah, so that's insane.
It's insane, and how they did it's insane because, they do it all in one shot of him, like, leaping out. And the thing you don't think about that they talk about in the commentary course is the cameraman who had to jump out backwards with the camera on his helmet to shoot Ethan flying forward, leaping out at him. So a cameraman who's also parachuting then has to because it was all in camera for like 2 minutes, like following Cruise's Ethan, and it wasn't Henry Cavill, but the guy playing the comatose Walker. It's just absolutely insane. And it is funny because McQuarrie does address because yes, it's not Paris below, so that's a digital replacement. Like, well, if you're going to digitally replace what's below, then why not just do it all digitally? They argue that like every test they did of like, let's do this in like a wind tunnel scenario didn't look good. Looked like people on wires, even if they weren't on wires. And then, of course, Cruise was like, well, there's only one way to do this. So, obviously, Cruise, I think, just wants to do this crazy stuff.
I think we talked about last week with Ghost Protocol that when they release what Tom Cruise is really doing himself ahead of time as part of, like, the hype for these movies,
yeah,
and then us going in knowing that it's him and not looking for where's the fakery, where's the CGI, where's the trickery, and just knowing it's him and seeing how it's done, like adds this extra layer of excitement to the movie. It just does. No, they could have faked it, obviously, but
it's just a cool, amazing thing to do. No, to be like, wow, this is one of the most famous movie stars leaping from this plane.
It's just a funny phenomenon because doing it himself obviously adds a lot to the movie, but also you do need to know ahead of time that he did it himself.
Yes.
So it's a two-part.
Or you'd assume it was all done digitally.
Yeah, you do need that bit of information ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So then we get something that didn't sort of come to fruition in Ghost Protocol when they tried to get Max back, Vanessa Redgrave. Now they have basically what they maybe should have done last minute at the last one, which is like, it's not Max, but it's, this case, her daughter, who is the White Widow, and then also her son, because her brother is part of the team. So
the guy who looks like Tom Hardy and Adam Driver merged together.
Yeah, beautifully, sexually.
Yes.
So so now we've got basically the new era version of Max, who is the White Widow, and what's the brother's name? I don't even know. But so that's what's her name? Vanessa
Kirby, who's also part of the Fast and Furious franchise now. So it's kind of funny because she's like in the past 2 years joined these mega action franchises.
Right, and and then Isla Faust comes into the scene as well, and we get the big kind of standout moment from this movie. One of the standout moments, especially because people are marveling at Henry Cavill's arms in his shirt. But the bathroom fight scene, and that's one of the things that I think McQuarrie really did bring to this series, were the fights. Like the one-on-one fist fights.
The actual physical fights, yeah.
Yeah, because, 3 had them, but like they weren't as well done.
Yeah, and this is a fantastic one. Obviously, there's another big one at the end with Walker and Ethan. But the bathroom fight, which is terrific. The guy who they fight is usually a stunt performer, and he was Emily Blunt's stunt performer on Edge of Tomorrow. So he worked with Cruise and McQuarrie on that. But just a great fight scene, and they mentioned something that we've praised on the commentary, but how they thought it was important that both Ethan and Walker get their asses kicked in that fight a lot. The whole idea that bigger than life, these guys who do bigger than life stuff, but they are fallible and can both kind of be beaten down in the right scenario.
Yeah, this is when it's a weird thing, because at this moment, if we're looking at the big plot, which is that Walker and Solomon Lane, well, more specifically Solomon Lane, who I haven't even mentioned, but I'm super happy came back because I loved him in the last movie. Yeah. I'm happy he's a recurring villain here. He's sort of the co-villain, but he's also the monologuing villain. He's the one who's more the fact that Walker and Lane like get into little tiffs about like Lane has become much more of the James Bondian villain, which is like, I need to hurt Ethan and I need to symbolically hurt him in these ways, so that I have gone out of my way to set up like this medical facility and getting Julia transferred there, or an anonymous donor, all that stuff. Like the end game of emotional torment for Ethan, which is more important to Lane than obviously it is for Walker, who just wants to blow up bombs.
That's why
it's a fun dynamic.
It's a fun dynamic, and they do it. That's why they do a very good job of the Benji reveal later on has Lane, because that scene does a lot of heavy lifting for the Walker-Lane relationship. And so it's serving two masters, because it's also going to be a fake out since it's not even Lane. But Benji has Lane does a very good job of conveying but I want Ethan Hunt to suffer, that Walker's kind of pissed off by, because he just wants to kill him.
Yeah, so Benji, and it is funny too, because you mentioned last movie with Rogue Nation, the physical similarities, just facially wise, between like what Lane looked like in Rogue Nation and Benji and Simon Pegg, and now he gets to wear a mask of him, where obviously Lane looks a lot different because he's got a big beard and he's all scraggly. But then they get a big fight scene too at the end. They get a lot more one-on-one time, these two. I think Benji's like faced Lane more than anyone. He's gotten captured by him. He's been awful, huge fight scenes. But anyway, thinking about this is the moment where Walker, I guess based on Lane's plan, makes Hunt take over as John Lark. Like he has to assume the John Lark identity and deal with the White Widow, and this is all part of what is going to eventually work to frame Ethan as John Lark. It's a little hinky, but we let it go because Ilsa's there. Some fun moments of Walker and Ilsa helping Ethan and White Widow escape the assassins, which leads us into the moment where they have to free Lane, where Ethan learns that he has to be a part of basically breaking Solomon Lane out of jail. And there's that something that they toyed around with in Rogue Nation, which is the basically daydream sequence of Ethan imagining how it will go if they do White Widow's plan.
Right.
Which is killing all the cops. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was really fun. Ethan comes up, obviously, with a way to... And a big part of this movie, we should say, we've already mentioned a little bit, is the fact that, yeah, Ethan wouldn't sacrifice Luther, and it's made out to be a weakness at the beginning by Sloane. Is that Angela Bassett's character's name?
Erica Sloane, I believe, yes.
Where it's like, yeah, you need to think of the millions and not the one. And then at the end, she's like, guess what? I like the fact that you think of the one. You know? So
well, I mean, what I think I also like about that, because it's not like other movies have dealt with that, like the hero who's like, Captain America has this too, like, oh, are you willing to make the sacrifice, and sometimes shouldn't you let one person go to save everyone else? But Hundley instantly is like, no, this is a strength of yours,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah. And so obviously, if you know anything about Ethan, you kind of recognize this as a daydream because he would never be a part of anything like this. To the point, jumping ahead a little bit, where he saves that French cop. Remember when when she's catching him and she gets shot, but he saves her life in the end because he kills White Widow's goons and stuff. Now I want French cop to come back.
Yes.
Like, is she going to come back with the continuity of the series?
I don't know about French cop if she'll join the IMF.
I don't know. It's kind of an extended scene.
Yeah. Oh no, it is.
I would not be surprised if French cop came back in some capacity. Like next movie, she's head of Interpol somehow. I don't know. And then she sees Ethan. He's like, "You saved my life." Oh. So anyway, yeah. Then we get the crazy motorcycle chase through Paris. Just so well. I mean,
unbelievable.
Don't have
Once
to
again,
jizz all over it, but it is just
stuff.
It's just such a huge, well shot, well constructed.
And again, this movie, the series raises the bar for itself so much. So it's like I can't help but be like, well, maybe the Rogue Nation one I like even a little more as far as kind of the action aspects of it. But this is amazing. And yeah, Ethan driving into traffic, going the wrong way, and once again Tom Cruise doing all this crazy shit. It's pretty phenomenal.
Let's see. Yeah, I think, again, not to like dote on every single, we're not taking minutes of the movie here, but just the bringing up of Lane, we get another like very quick day, like once they've captured Lane and they've got him, like Ethan takes a little power nap, and once again dreams of the prophetic dream of doom and gloom coming specifically to Julia. So he kind of has a little telepathic powers in this movie, like little obvious. The funny thing about it is that everything that Tom Cruise is dreaming in this movie, his fears will come to pass in the final 40 minutes of this movie. But I think the series still gets away with it because it's not like, oh, Ethan is somehow now a prophet. It's not like that because you imagine these are dreams he has all the time.
Yes.
This isn't just a dream that has come up, maybe even in the past couple of years because of Solomon Lane. Mm-hmm. Because Solomon Lane's a part of these dreams, and obviously Ethan at the beginning of the movie has no idea that he's going to have to be breaking him out of jail in a few days' time.
So here's the funny thing that I found out on the commentary last night, which is the opening dream was scripted originally that it was not Lane performing the ceremony, it was Hundley. And they say what happened was, I can't remember where they were, New Zealand, and Alec Baldwin wasn't available, and they said now they can't imagine it was never not going to be Lane, Like,
right, exactly.
Of course it's Lane that's in the dream performing that, because his whole thing is, it's like, yeah, Julia and Lane are two separate things, but it's like all of his sort of fears of everything in his life, like, yeah, mashing together. And
oh my God, Eric, what if it was Billy?
That was their third choice. If Sean Harris wasn't available. Who do we get here? Who's performing this?
Yeah, it's like people really need to be reminded of who Julia is, but they really need to be reminded of who Billy is.
What if that's who Walker had a photo of?
Oh, it's like Billy. He's like, no, my Aussie pilot. All right.
The greatest IMF agent ever. No.
It's just a picture of Aaron Paul. It's like, no, Julia's brother.
Who accidentally gave way too much information to Owen Davian's guys about her working at a hospital.
It's just Greg Grunberg.
It's the guy who got sent to Antarctica or whatever that station is that they made have to go shit and puke.
Also, so yeah, this movie with Ilsa, because she's part of this chase, she's actively also trying to kill Solomon Lane in Ethan's car.
Yeah.
But like Ilsa, this movie is very important for Ilsa wise. Obviously, Rogue Nation was as well, but this one is like bringing her into the team because by the end of this movie, she's made peace with MI6, and now you feel like she's going to go forward as part of Ethan's team, the IMF, in some regard, because she was really was a passing of the torch that you know, a lot of people who really wanted to know more closure on Julia, passing of the torch between Julia and Ilsa, and you know, getting Julia's blessing, if you will, or at least giving Ethan, assuaging his guilt enough that he can move on.
Right.
And not feel like he needs to protect Julia at every turn. So, but, you know, also kudos to the series for, once again, not killing Solomon Lane. You know, I don't need him in the next movie.
Actively wants to die. So.
Yeah, I don't need him in the next movie, but if whatever Mission Impossible 8 is, if that turns out to be the final one, like, then he should come back for that, I suspect.
Right.
Like, you can take a break from Lane, but I do want him back. Okay, then, a lot of stuff. There's the stuff with I think the stuff with Hunley being in on the ruse that's meant to trap and single out Walker as John Lark when they're all down in the tunnels I think it works well, but I think they go really too hard. This is just for me on the framing of Ethan and trying to sell the audience that Hunley and really buys into it, because I didn't, even when I saw it the first time, I was like, this is well-worn territory. And the fact that Hunley buys it after he just got sold so hard on IMF last movie. So I didn't buy it. So obviously the only way to go with that is that Hunley's in on it with them. But I don't know, maybe trim 1 minute from that scene. It's just
I mean, I guess I see what you mean.
It's the murkiest part of the movie for me.
The series, the movie itself is acknowledging how many times like the government has turned on Ethan at this point. Earlier, like they have Walker bring it up, and I can't remember in the theater if I thought that Hunley was in on it or not. I just know that it plays extremely satisfying when Benji reveals that he's Lane and Hunley comes up behind Walker with the gun. Like,
so is there a
that
reason?
Is a very fun moment.
Is there a reason? And I'm trying to think of the movie now, and maybe I just missed the scene when they lead real Lane out, and Walker thinks it's fake Lane, thinking that they've left real Solomon Lane behind. Is there a reason why Solomon Lane in that moment doesn't tell Walker, "Hey, that's not me in the chair"?
I don't know if we know enough because we didn't see him leave the room, so we don't know if he ever saw Benji in the chair.
Okay, I feel like I saw them pass that, and I made note of it in my brain, but I still, you know, my brain can betray me.
Yeah, but you might be right. Yeah, I don't know. You might be right. Yeah, I don't know for sure if we have that or not. I mean, we've already seen people gagged underneath masks in this series. So,
yeah, maybe Lane was wearing a Lane mask. Lane himself was wearing a Lane mask, and real Lane was gagged under.
That's
the
what I'm
Lane
saying.
Yeah, all right, yeah, that's what I'm going with. You solved it. You solved it for me. That's all I needed. Then, in case anyone was worried by this point in the movie, if Tom Cruise would do any running at all, we get the big running scene.
The running sequence that led to him breaking his ankle.
Oh, that's the one where they had to shut down for like 3 weeks or 4 more, 8 weeks.
The shots in the movie when he does multiple building to building leaps, but and they even show him hobble afterwards. But this got them like basically. I read on Wikipedia that this cost the film $80 million because they had to pay the entire crew during the 2 months that they were out, so they wouldn't take other gigs. But it was covered ultimately in the end by movie insurance, basically superstar insurance, Tom Cruise insurance. Floated the bill for this one, but but still, like, man, it's just he runs so good, Eric. He does.
There's this moment in this movie where he's running so fast, like you just look at his form, you're like, man, like a
And he's
gazelle.
got like that big stretch on these buildings. Yeah,
Oh
it's
man.
great. It's like they kind of, obviously at this point everything they're doing they're self aware of, including like the Tom Cruise running is a thing, but Tom Cruise running in the Mission Impossible movies especially is a thing. And
Yeah.
so they give him this giant running sequence.
Let's see. So
And
yeah, and then this is when you talked about the moment in the elevator when he's catching up with him.
yeah, and then we get the Julia photo and kind of learn that like Lane knows about her, and yeah, is targeting her. Which again, is followed by a very good scene for Ilsa and Luther. It's funny, and I didn't get to this on the commentary, but he has the line. Luther has the line about there's only been two women Ethan has like really cared, loved or cared about,
Yeah.
and who is the second woman that he's referring to there? Is the question.
Ilsa.
Because that's the thing, yeah. Because people are like, "Is it Naya?"
No, no. I always thought it was meant. There's been two women, Julia, and now you.
Yeah,
I think that was
No,
the point of that
I
conversation.
think that is the intention of-
Okay, I didn't know that confused
the,
people.
The Naya Stan clan.
Yeah. There's a. Well, I don't even know what Ethan Hunt and Naya's name would like. Couple's name would be. What's their ship name? It doesn't even work.
Yeah.
Nyant. But yeah, it's like it's two people he's ever loved in his life: Julia and Jim Phelps' wife.
Right. He's never mentioned you.
Okay, we get a lot of information here because now they're tracking Solomon Lane because they put a tracker in him. They're tracking him to Kashmir, and we get a lot of information about how impossible it is to deactivate these bombs, and it's very important. It's a lot of information, but it's very important because they have to let the countdown start.
Mm-hmm.
So you get this amazing, fun, multi-pronged shell game of an ending that, on top of Julia being there and it being a surprise, and also ambushed a little by Wes Bentley showing up out of nowhere as Julia's new husband.
Yeah,
who gets
Well,
a
I think
very amusing end. Obviously, at the end, he realizes, whether Julia has told him or not, that Ethan is not a doctor.
right.
But it's like, what was he told? Like, after everything that just happened there, what was Eric? I think his name was.
It wasn't. His name was Eric. Yeah.
What was he
Maybe
told?
has
Because
Eric and an Erica, by the way. Very exciting time for me.
yeah, how do you feel about it? I know. Is he Eric with a K? I don't even know. He's got the amusing like farewell line to Ethan when he's in the hospital bed at the end. He's like, "See you later, Doc." Yeah. I'm like, "Oh, he just thought it was all fun."
I remember
he figures it was a good time in Kashmir. Yeah,
I remember some people thought he was going to turn out to be a bad guy because it was Wes Bentley. I think you cast Wes Bentley to do some heavy lifting because it's like he's not going to get a lot of like he's not like we're going to get to know him that well, but you want it to feel like a significant person that you feel like Julia has picked someone that's good to be with, but also like of significance. It's like it's a little distracting that it's Wes Bentley, but I also understand why you casted Wes Bentley in that part.
I know, but also he looks as years go on, people recognize Wes Bentley less and less, so it's fine.
Aww.
I'm just saying, people like us would be like, "Hey, it's Wes Bentley." Everyone else is like, "I don't know, some guy." Right?
Chanting Bentley.
Bentley. Okay, so and again, he's also on
Yellowstone.
He's also on the Yellowstone along with Josh Holloway. It's where all these people who don't get recognized anymore, but were once something for a few years, they go to Yellowstone. Okay. Amazing
also, by the way,
scene.
I really like the moment. Obviously there's a lot of big stuff here. There's when Julia and Ethan are reunited. Great stuff where she like sees the team, and obviously she knows Luther and Benji and realizes something awful is happening, and there's not time to explain to her in that moment what's happening, but just him saying I'm so sorry.
I loved how much, just what you're saying, like, I loved how much she knew something was going on. Like, how smart Julia is and how she's able to pick up on everything. Yeah. Just from him being there and giving her a look. And, like, she just knows. And that's all you need, and that's what's so good about this relationship and that character in this series. It's like, yeah, that's it. That's all she needs. And also, all she needs to be like, in a few minutes, like, what can I do to help? Like, she just
Right.
can't sit there. She needs to be an active part of it, and it calls back to who she is as a character from 3.
Yeah, yep.
Um,
It's great, and I also really love Lane sees Ethan jump on the helicopter to chase Walker, and kind of has a great. It's like he underplays it, which is well done because Lane wants Ethan there. That's the whole point. Like he's drawn there because he wants revenge. He wants him to die there.
no, he doesn't.
Oh, that's right. Well,
He
I don't
he
know.
he wants Julia to die.
He
But
wants Julia to
he
die.
wants. I guess he does. Ultimately, I don't know how much
He
the plan
wants
got
the bombs
improvised.
to go off.
No,
He wants the
yeah, I
bombs
know.
to-
And he wanted Julia to be there and get killed in the blast. But the original plan, and I think a lot of what everyone did in this movie, the heroes and the villains did they improvised a lot. The original plan was Ethan gets framed as John Lark and is incarcerated and goes to
Yes,
jail
yes.
and has to watch from his jail cell, or his room with no windows that he'll never come out of, that Julia has died and that he is John Lark.
Right.
Because even Walker, when in that elevator scene, is like, you go turn yourself in and I won't kill her.
Right.
Like,
right.
you hang
But
yourself
what I
over
like
to
is
the
that-
authorities and say you are John Lark. That was Solomon Lane's plan.
But I still like with Lane there when he sees Ethan, it's like he knows that there's a very good possibility. Like he knows Ethan Hunt well enough to know, like he doesn't go Hunt. He just kind of is watching it happen because it's like, well, let's see how this plays out.
Yeah, well, I think that's what his team do too. He has the same reaction to that as his team does, which is like, that's Ethan being Ethan. And Benji gets the funny line where it's like, it's best if we don't look, when he's trying to explain to Ilsa,
Right.
like, because even after Rogue Nation, she's still getting a crash course on how crazy Ethan is
Yes.
in this movie, and how they even have, like, at the beginning of this movie, they call out, like, hope is not a strategy, and like, it's probably Benji who says, like, well, obviously you haven't met our team, like,
Right.
that's a big thing. And yeah, I can't say enough great things about this final third act, which is the return of Julia, the culmination of Solomon's plan in whatever form it has now taken, because Ethan is there, and the bomb diffusion on the ground. You've got the Luther Julia scene. Then you've got the Ilsa, will she kill Lane or save Benji scene. We get to see Lane actually be a formidable physical opponent. He's a fucking British agent. Like,
Yes,
he didn't get to
yes.
do anything in the last movie because that wasn't who he was in that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's an expert fighter, like, in this movie. So we got to see him in fight scenes. The Benji being hanged, and they have to disarm a bomb. And you've got Tom Cruise
2 bombs.
in a helicopter that is separate from the helicopter of the villain he needs to get. And
Right.
it's just, Tom Cruise in those helicopter flying scenes is so fun. Just like the way he earnestly is like, come on, like, oh, not now. Like, all of his frustrations that he's vocalizing as he's trying to do what is completely impossible.
But
But yet he does it. And yeah, it is a lot of luck, Eric. A lot of luck that he can ram that helicopter. Like, the fact that he's choosing to ram the helicopter is amazing. But that they land close enough together. And I did mention cutscene earlier when talking about Johnny Gargano. But the scene when they fall through the airplane cabins into each other's cabin, and like, that's a very Uncharted animatics scene. Like, that feels like it was from a video game. I say that in a good way. It's a very well done action sequence, as well as like one helicopter tumbling into the next helicopter, and the fact that they both land in the same place to the point where he can still see the detonation device.
right.
Like, it's still visible to
it's
him.
all great because the device which is almost gonna fall off, and also, by the way, it was funny. This is one of the, I think, kind of famous examples of like cool moment in the trailers that didn't make it into the movie, which is when Ethan's flying the helicopter and almost is like going to collide with like a truck. Which was just there was more to the chase, the helicopter chase, including this moment where they flew down below the clouds at like ground level, and suddenly Ethan almost collided with a truck, but they just decided to trim it down. But it's all super exciting. The fight is really cool between the two of them. Walker kind of gets his Two-Face moment there, and then a moment that I wanted to cheer, that maybe I did cheer a little in the theater, which is Ethan saves himself with his rock climbing ability.
Call back to rock climbing. So good.
Yes.
And the way that the final scene played out worked so well, which is like, there's no way for them to communicate. So all Ethan can do is disarm it and hope that they have cut the switches. all they can do is cut the switches and hope he's disarmed it. You
Yes.
know, and so they do wait till literally they have no choice but to wait till the last second, because that's it. Like, he's either done it or he hasn't done it by that moment. And the fact that they could do we see it from the wire cutter's side. Then we go to Cruz and see that he's disarmed it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that played out fantastically.
No, it's great. It's great. And then a very unusual, like, final scene for an action movie, but, like, you know, Ethan's just in a hospital bed at the end. But it gives him, like, sort of the big, you know, final scene with Julia. You know, her telling him basically, like, you didn't ruin my life. Very well played between them. You know, there's like a lot of good emotion in this movie.
Yeah, closure, because we did sort of get closure at the end of 4, but more closure, to the point where, again, giving Ethan permission as far as, like, the weight of the world, the responsibility, the guilt he feels over Julia, giving him that pass to move forward, presumably with Ilsa.
Yes.
And
who whispers something to Julia we don't get to hear.
It's whatever Roman Reigns whispered to Jey Uso.
Right.
It's the same thing.
And
it's like she said, "You're going to be my."
Same thing Bill Murray whispered to Scarlett Johansson. It's the
which
same
is you're going to be my indentured servant.
Dark turn. There.
Dark turn for all three.
Right.
And Julia's like, cool.
Lane is turned over to MI5, which lets
MI6.
Ilsa off.
Is it MI5?
MI6, yeah. Okay. MI5 was Mission Impossible 5. MI6, the movie we're watching. Lane is turned over to, which gets Ilsa off the hook because that's what they wanted, for her to kind of be free. Also, we see, like, the White Widow there, which I know, if I recall correctly, again, I didn't finish the commentary last night, and I listened to the 3-part podcast 2 years ago, but I believe that was all reshoots and changes because the White Widow, unfortunately, got, like, removed from the third act with rewrites while they were making the movie.
Yeah, so they just needed her to come back to remind people, and she's going to be in the movies going forward. So
she's going to be in the movie going forward. The big thing was, originally she had a huge fight scene, I believe, with Ilsa. She was there, like, she was present in the third act originally, and Vanessa Kirby trained for weeks for a giant fight scene that they didn't realize, like, this character is extraneous in the sequence. And so she got cut from it. So they put her there at the end just to, you know, make sure the character is still sort of present, but she will be back and hopefully.
But then she got to use all of her training for Hobbs and Shaw, so it worked out.
Yes, exactly.
Which had Roman Reigns in it. So this is the connection, is what we're saying. It had the tribal chief.
Right.
In a tribal battle in Hobbs and Shaw at the end. Alrighty, Rue. Fallout. Excellent film. Again, I think I sort of still stand by. It's an excellent film for 2/3. Really good, obviously impressive action stuff, but that 40 minutes really pushes it over the top.
It's a great movie, and then we mentioned that it's the longest movie. It's like 2.5 hours, and again, there is no implicit shorter is better. And they talk about the length in the commentary because they said the studio had concerns about it, but that when they did a shorter version, when they screened them both, the shorter version tested weaker because they were cutting a lot of the better character moments and a lot of the more emotional stuff. I think this movie earns its 2.5 hours. Again, there are great action movies that are a tight 90 or a tight, hour and 45.
Yeah, but also, like, look at the box office for this movie.
And it was the biggest hit. Yeah, it was the biggest hit of the series, so clearly it didn't hurt. Again, I don't want to go into specifics because I won't remember them all, but if you listen to that McQuarrie stuff from 2 years ago for The Empire, again, he goes into, like, minutia that I never hear people talk about. He even said how they kind of felt like the Mission Impossible movies were obviously a big success for Paramount. They'd become one of their sort of flagship franchises. But they kind of plateaued box office-wise. And that they had a big meeting before this one about that and about trying to reach younger audiences, which is something that they were failing to do. Again, I don't think this movie still wasn't like hitting $1 billion. It wasn't like Fast and Furious big, but it was the biggest hit of the series, which is saying something when you're 6 movies and at that point, like 22 years in? It was it was already a long time.
And for a movie that featured so much callback and continuity and hinged, was not standalone. It was like definitely built upon the other movies.
Yes. So a very impressive. Again, just in general, this series is is very unusual in all those regards. Like, just it's gotten stronger and stronger as it went on, and yeah, leaned more into continuity as it's gone on. But yeah, and so with the seventh one is coming. They're filming it right now. Angela Bassett has not been announced as returning, so that's interesting because pretty much everyone else of significance, as far as like the White Widow is back in the new one, and then of course we know Kittredge is coming back. The villain's a funny thing with it was Nicholas Hoult, but then he had to drop out because this was one of the movies that was supposed to start shooting like days before COVID shut everything down.
Yeah.
So Isai Morales is now playing the character Nicholas Hoult was going to play, which is such a different take on the same character. But,
and age.
Yes. Oh, and then well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like a completely different type. But then the all the MCU actors joining the new one, which is Agent Carter herself, Haley Atwell, Agent Carter Shea Wiggum, and Guardians of the Galaxy's Pom Klementif are all in new roles, and we don't know who they are and if they're good or bad, but we'll find out. But I'm just mostly excited about Kittredge, Matt.
I know. This has really been a long Kittredge cast.
Right. Kittredge.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for the Mission Impossible franchise series. And we don't know what... We're going to take a little break before we decide on what the next film run will be. So we won't have any news for you on that front next week, I don't believe. So, but thank you. Everything is impossible, but nothing is real. And Shakma.
Shakma.
Shakma!